Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. Been gone for a little while, but you know what? We're reunited and it feels good. Hope you all are doing well out there today. Nice, beautiful, sunny Sunday afternoon here in the middle of July. Went out to the lake yesterday. It is all well and good here. Unfortunately, all was not well and good in the life of Richard Sherman. I've held off a little while in trying to comment on this, but I know during the stream show here today, we are going to probably discuss it quite a bit, as I'm going to try to turn a little bit away from the topic. I think it has been discussed more than any of us really want to know. We know a little bit more about the background details than we really want to know. But with that said, it is out there and it is something that we have to talk about. I don't know what this is going to mean for the future of Richard Sherman. You guys know all of the information now, I'm sure, as it stands in his arrest, and it's all misdemeanor. And so there's chances here, a very good chance that he still comes back this season. I definitely can see that there were many people with their knives out on this situation. And the first second that Richard sort of has stumbled here now off the field, they were ready to pounce and drive in, you know, what had been some long issues, I'm sure, with him, because he's a guy who's talked a lot and he's built up a few of his share of quasi enemies out there who have turned it back around a little bit on him now, and they're going hard. Some in the fan bases as well. I think most of our fan base has been really solidly behind Richard, which is encouraging to see. This guy that went to San Francisco last year, this would be an easy way to now turn him into a heel, make him a villain, but instead they are still standing by this guy. And I don't know what he has left to offer on the football field. There's a lot of people out there that go off about how he's done and he can't play anymore. I look at the last two seasons of when he's on the football field and playing, and he played, I believe, in every game in 2019, a year in which he was the highest graded corner in the entire NFL. I mean, this is simply 2 seasons ago he hit this mark, and last year, despite fighting through some injuries, only the second time in his career he's fought through any of these injuries, still posted solid numbers. As a football player, he's got a lot to offer. What he's got off the field, where he is at from a headspace, I don't know. Certainly isn't a top priority at this point in time. But if he can get his stuff right, maybe there's a little bit of a suspension there, but comes around midseason, and maybe we can look at it as a thing that we pick up at that time. Beyond what's going on with him personally, the thing that this is just done and somewhat continually done is we've watched the era of the Legion of Boom end in this very, just this sad, rather than with a bang, kind of like a whimper is how I put it here in the description section, in that you're looking at a team that he was about to hit the highest of high marks. And I'm sure many of you older Seahawks fans can attest to this. You look at the history of Seattle sports, which basically in all capacities goes back to about the mid-'70s. And you look out through all that time period, the Sonics, the Mariners, the Seahawks, you got about 40, 50 years in there. Not a lot of good playing teams during that time. Not a lot. You've really had to go through some harsh times, some poor seasons, and you got to wait and wait for something to maybe turn around. Many times you've had to watch your owners pull your team from our local area. Every one of our clubs had threats at one time or another, and our Sonics actually got taken. But because we literally had fans willing to throw themselves in front of the traveling trucks that were going to leave and take all of the sporting equipment, all the weightlifting equipment out of the facilities in Seattle to move it on down to LA. And once you start that ball rolling, they probably would have been gone. But we had fearless fans throwing their body and soul and livelihood into the center of those trucks. So thank God they remained. My point is, we don't get a lot here in the Pacific Northwest to really cherish and enjoy. Even when we have those teams that are good, or even when we have those players that have been great, the Griffeys, the Rodriguezes, the Kemps. Peyton was here for pretty much his whole career, but none of them were ever able to really kind of tap into that potential that they flashed and showed for a little bit of time. And then we get our Seahawks in 2013, where truly we've got a team that is on the rise, has dynastic tones to it in the way they operate, a collection of players the likes of which the NFL has never seen, beast mode and Sherman and Chancellor, Wagner steady in the middle with KJ Wright, an offensive line that wanted to maul you, a young quarterback as dynamic as we'd ever seen, receivers on the side that were interesting. It was a team that was just not only great in that moment, but seemed to have so much potential to what it could be. And instead, it tapped into that for a bright, hot, shining moment and then dipped off, fell away. And as great as it is to win a Super Bowl, and I'm not complaining, as awesome as it is to go back to back-to-back Super Bowls twice, and I'm not complaining, there has been a continued, just like a jab into your soul, watching this thing sputter on down the mark and cough and wheeze and friction. And you see the players in it who have the off-the-field stuff too, or the on-the-field stuff too, as was with Earl Thomas, or the Cam Chancellor Cliff Avrils, who suddenly saw their necks turn into a degenerative state in the middle of their careers. The Bennetts and Shermans who kind of talked their way out of town. The Golden Tates even, who's bounced his way around in town. It's been an ignominious end for those players who are part of that Legion of Boom team. And it's just sad to say, I don't have any great, wondrous things to say above it that you can take away from it or anything else. I don't know that there is really just a lesson here. It's just something that's been really hard to watch as this is broken down, to see this all go this way when there was so much real, true potential greatness there, and to see it sort of fit into the same type of ends that we're a little bit used to here in Seattle. A place where we as a baseball team won 116 games, more than any other team in Major League history. But did we go get the Super Bowl? Did we go win the World Series in that year? No. Didn't even get to the World Series. Haven't ever been to the World Series. And I hope that, the last point I'll make on this is I hope, and I don't know if it's the case right now, I don't, but I hope as Carroll and Wagner and Russell Wilson are standing there, Schneider's in on this mix, that they can all recognize there's still a last little stretch of hope you can tap into here. There's a last little bit of aggressiveness you can go at here to try to maybe reclaim just a little bit of a bookend to this era. Rather than it going out with that whimper, you've got one last thrust that you can bring in here. One last before Carroll retires, or God forbid Wilson moves on, or Wagner retires. And that you realize and recognize, and this has been a theme, as you all know, throughout this offseason, it will remain now, it will remain into the season, because I recognize it through the historical lens that we're looking through this. It's not just into this year, it's into this 10-year stretch of football that we've watched, the best 10-year stretch of football in Seahawks history. And they sit with a very good team now, 10 days before the start of training camp, a team that can go out there and get it done. But is it a team that certainly will get it done? Is it a team that absolutely will push past that glass ceiling that they've run into the past 6 years? Is it a team that could do better than it's done in the last half decade? I don't know yet. I don't know. I know that there's more meat on that bone. There's $8 million in cap you're sitting on. There's a couple more million you're going to be sitting on in contract extensions to Jamal Adams and Dwayne Brown when those probably come down the pike. And then you still have, just sitting there in the background, Russell Wilson's base contract this year, which can be converted to bonus and save you an additional $10 million. Maybe there's not a player out there to go get right now. Maybe it makes more sense to be patient and wait until the trade deadline. But I hope that they don't leave that meat on the bone through the whole year and let it rot. Because as it rots, so potentially could go this team and its potential this year. And so could, too, the dying of the era fully commence. I hope not. I certainly hope not. Go for it, John Schneider. Go for it, Pete Carroll. Go for it, Russell Wilson. Attack this season like there's not going to be another one. For there may not be. All right, let's get to the chat. Sorry I've been away for so long. We are going to do a short live stream today. And before I get to this on the thing, I want to thank my newest members here onto the channel. Thomas Cox, Robin Hayhurst, Robert Pennington, my brother. How you doing? Leland Kimball, Go Hawks 2021, and of course, Roxanne Roll. Hey, Roxanne, I appreciate all of you on the membership train on that. And my patrons, Devin Martzall, Kevin D. Constanzo, Carmine, I might as well say your name right, at least I get this right. But Carmine D. Constanzo and Emmanuel Mendehane. Thank you to all of you on that front for being patrons and being members. As well, I've got some more additional good content news to announce to you guys today. I'm going to be going on tomorrow onto Last Second Sports. I'm going into the belly of the beast, folks. I'm going into like Jonah into the whale. I do not know if I shall come out. But I'm going in with a harpoon, so I'm hoping that's going to help me a little bit. If you want to check out tomorrow right around 6 o'clock, Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to go on Last Second Sports, which is a 49er fan channel, and we'll see if it's going to be hopefully civil and good to go back and forth. But should be some fun to go back in there and see what their perspective is and where maybe some of the 49er fans feel that they're going to be at this year, because I know that they think they're going to have a great year. And right before we start out, I got to say thank you to Randall McDaniel. Buddy, you are amazing and awesome as always. You come in every show and start us off right. Thank you for the $50 donation. You're amazing. He says, sure glad my darkest hour wasn't served up for public consumption. Don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. Between him, family, and Redmond PD. Very, very well said, Randall, and that's pretty much where I stand in the statements. I think that you've got to be hesitant when things are going bad for guys. This was like this a little bit last year with the Earl Thomas thing. I don't really want to talk really about this stuff. You know, if it's really pursuant to what's going on the field, we'll talk about it. If it's going to affect what's going on the field, we'll talk about it. But Sherman's a free agent. He's not even a Seahawk right now. And to dive too hard into this, in my opinion, when, you know, really some things are just best left to let them mend and fix. Situations need to work out. People go through hard times. You know, we can only guess as to what's kind of been happening in the background. So, but I appreciate your sentiments, and more importantly, I appreciate your $50 donation, Randall. Thank you so much. Maxwell Stern, good to see you in here. Why do I? Let's go. Why do I? JDM, you are second or third. Second, third, it's about the same. Go Hawks 05. Let's go. I missed the last couple of streams. Let's go Hawks. Well, we got you in on this one, and we're going to be doing more streams for sure during the year. I will get 2 streams in during the week, and I'm going to be trying to get an episode done this season, all during the season. So we're going to really be trying to kick out the content. I wanted to kind of recharge up here for the year on that. I'm working on still some content in the background too. That's why I haven't been up live as much, but we'll get it. TJ, good to see you. How you doing? He says, I was kind of sad you weren't live Saturday. Chit Chat was my birthday, but it's all good. And don't forget, go Hawks. Don't you ever forget, TJ. And we'll get the live streams going a little bit more too. I was fighting off a little bit of a cold as well, so I was a little on the mend myself. Daniel W, is Richard Sherman out of the Ring of Honor now in the future? No, I don't believe so. I think Richard Sherman and his impact is certainly going to reach the Ring of Honor at some point. I absolutely do. I don't know that this really. I don't think that maybe it should, but to me, in my mind, it just doesn't feel like something that's really going to taint him in that respect. He's done a lot of good. I don't think there was a quote made this last week about whether a man should be judged by the worst moment, by his darkest moment, by when he's doing the worst thing, or the worst thing happens. I think it's a little bit, to me, analogous. I can't say words today. I got to stay away from the $7 words today because I can't pronounce them. But it's a little bit comparative to me on when you see people judge a game off of a play or two. And they'll gravitate towards that and they'll make that everything. And you go, well, wait, this game was 80, 90, 100 plays. How do you go when you make it just this one play and decide that is everything? Like, as you see, for instance, with Russell Wilson, you know, he gets held to, and Coach Carroll, for that matter, falls into the same vein because they kind of blame them both. They both sort of get the same amount of vein on this of the interception in the Super Bowl game. And you get held to that account, and that gets held harshly over you when you have all this collection of plays throughout your career. You've done all of this other stuff, but we're going to make that the thing that is the thing that most matters. And I think that we in Seattle tend to be a little bit above that. We're not going to throw somebody up under the bus like that as a fan base. We tend to stick with our guys. If you're a Seahawk, if you're a guy that went out there and we're part of a Super Bowl winning championship, the only championship we've got, and you were one of the best players, one of what I would say, one of the leaders on that team. I'm doing a mic'd up moments. I've been working on this best of the mic'd up moments session. And there's a game in the Minnesota Vikings game in 2013 where Richard Sherman's over there on the field and he's mic'd up. And this is the game you guys have seen, of course, played over and over again, where he's talking trash to the receivers about them needing to lift more and that they're weak and a waste of his time, and he's yawning. But there's also a great moment within it where Walter Thurman, who was the slot corner on that team, is sort of sitting there, and he's not a guy who got a lot of interceptions, but Richard looks over at him kind of coyly. And he goes, and he sort of does a little bit of he does this little motion with his hands, and he says to Walter, he says, Thurm, and Thurman looks over to him, he says, this one might be the one. This one might be the one. And Ponder drops back at the quarterback, throws a little hitch route, the 7-yard hitch route. Walter jumps the route, runs it back for a pick six. And you see, as I'm putting together some of these mic'd up moments of these guys on the sideline, I know Richard had his outburst moments as well, but there's also a lot of moments in there with him on the sideline, talking guys up. Hey, we need you to come through here. Let's do this. I'm going to be right here. Let's go. Let's do that. And it's very positive. It's very pushing guys forward. Just what you would want to see in a teammate. You need those kind of guys. So, sorry too, guys. We're not going to try to talk too much on Richard, but I will. If you guys have a couple things with it, we'll cover a little bit. But no, Daniel, I think he does get into the Ring of Honor. Bodine Lynchfield, how you doing? Yes, sir. It's my favorite YouTuber on YouTube. Oh, you are very kind, Bodine. I appreciate that. I'm here, sir. I'm looking forward to your very awesome insight. You're our Seahawks ambassador. I love it, man. I got to get a robe, I feel like, if I'm going to be an ambassador, though. I don't know why, but I feel like I need a robe. TJ, I don't care what Richard did off the field. He still deserves the Seahawks Ring of Honor, and that goes with Earl, too. I believe so. Again, you've got guys that had impact and then had impact on a squad that went and won a Super Bowl. Yeah, those are the type of guys who tend to end up in the Ring of Honor. You end up with multiple from an era of them. Look at the Steelers in their era of the late 70s. Many of those guys, I believe, are in their particular Ring of Honor. Do they have a Ring of Honor? I thought they did. But that's usually what you'll see, and I think you'll see it here. I don't believe at the end of the day that the organization is going to say, oh, there was this one incident that happened within the, I think he's the head of the Players Association. He's been great off the field as far as his volunteer work goes and doing the charitable stuff. So I think at the end of the day, this is really going to be a blip. This was mainly for the haters to be able to relish and enjoy. And let them enjoy for the moment, but it's going to go away. Brando, what are your thoughts on free agent cornerback Steven Nelson? Go Hawks. As I understand it with Steven Nelson, he is only a slot corner, Brando. So he has been a very good player in playing a slot cornerback position, but he has been a slot, and mainly a slot within that Steelers defense that does go a little heavier. They're not, I think, the heaviest blitzing team in the league, but they're definitely a team that does like to do their share of blitzing, which tends to then put the cornerback in a bit different situation than maybe playing zone, although the slot guy kind of just does what he does out there, depises just whatever the scheme. He tends to be more in a man-on-man stuff than he is the zone. But he'd be a good addition if you didn't already have Uwe Amadi, if you didn't have Marquise Blair coming back and returning. It would be a guy that you would probably take a look at. But I don't think that there's a fit right now with him, with you already being kind of stacked up at that particular position. You need more outside zone corners right now than just inside slot guys. Go Hawks 05. If I believe correctly, we still haven't filled Scary Terry's spot on the roster. What free agent should we sign there? I hope it's Josh Gordon. I've thought a little bit about this, Go Hawks. I definitely would like to see Josh Gordon signed. I don't know if it would be necessarily dependent upon it being this particular roster spot here to fill it, but I'm okay with doing it because I do need to see our wide receiver core filled out with some more talent. And there's not a lot of extra talent out there available via either trade or free agency, so you got to kind of grab what you can grab at that point. Despite what he comes with as far as his off-the-field potential stuff goes, if you can hear something from the commissioner's office saying it's good to go, I think you sign him there. I would say go Hawks 05. I'd wait to hear from the commissioner's office that he's good to go. He's just filed for reinstatement. Let's see how long they take to make a determination on that. But if they give him that determination, then I'm all in. If not, though, I'm going to wait. I don't think I want to necessarily hold up a roster spot with him until I know that the commissioner's office is going to take him from out of the woodshed, put some Band-Aids on the backside because they've been whooping it for about the last 2 years, and let the guy get back out onto the football field. Kyle, great job, Brando. Thank you. Go Hawks. What is your thoughts on Sherman? Are the Seahawks out on him bringing him back? Where would you rank DK in top receivers? I have him in the 7 to 10 range, but will be in the top after. I think that this definitely puts Richard Sherman on point with potentially coming back. Actually, I'm not trying to say it's a good thing for our Seahawks, but this happening basically helps both the Seahawks and 49ers equally, I would say, in potentially bringing back Richard Sherman and bringing him back at a discounted rate. Already you had very few teams out there that you were probably competing for, and we were talking about already being in the realm of a 1 year $3, 1 year $4 million deal, which is part of the reason why it's taken so long for him to sign. I can't imagine that that's getting any more expensive now. And I can't imagine there's going to be as many teams that are going to be as willing to make that risk now without having already had him kind of in-house and knowing what they're getting and putting that out there, especially with a lot of teams pretty pushed up against their cap as we stand right now. So I think that does put him back on the track with Seattle or San Francisco, though I think that it's probably seems like kind of almost a 50-50 on either one. Though if he's doing some legal stuff here that he's got to be around for, maybe at that point it's just easier for him to just play in Seattle to complete those, whatever it may be. And then as far as DK Metcalf, I've got DK Metcalf probably about 7. 7 would be about right for me, Kyle. You've got to put a couple of guys, the DK Metcalf or the DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hills, definitely are above him there. I feel like there's just a couple of other guys that you could kind of slot in there. You'd feel a little bit more like, yeah, that guy's probably above him too. But he's right in there. He's knocking on top 5. And I think that he pushes into top 5 this year. I absolutely think he does. And you could honestly make a pretty good argument of it right now with that. I mean, Tyreek, yeah. Mike Evans and him are pretty neck and neck, I think, in what they are as a player. I think they're different players, but they're both pretty close in what they are. So he's knocking on the door, Kyle. I wouldn't put him, I don't think, past 7. 7 would be about the low for me because I'm really high on DK. I think he is truly going to be a generational type talent that you get at the wide receiver position. The baton that was passed from Calvin Johnson to Julio Jones can now, I believe, be passed to DK Metcalf. We'll see if that plays out. But I think with his pairing with Russell Wilson is a perfect pairing, and that's going to get the most out of him. Maxwell says, we are definitely not a contender right now. I think you're a contender right now, but you're relying a little bit on the luck of the draw, so to speak, relying on injuries not to pop up like they popped up in recent seasons. In a lot of respects, make no mistake about it, most NFL teams are going to come into the season with the hope of development at certain positions, key positions that you would actually really, you'd really like to see those positions being filled by something with a little more certainty to them. It's a little bit what I've talked about with the receiver position, where if DK or Tyler goes down, God forbid, you're sitting there with Eskridge and, DK or Eskridge and Tyler. And that certainly is a very thin wide receiver core at that point. I know that there may not be guys you can kind of fill out with that, but that, I've got to say, it's the part where if there's something you can do with that, or there's some control you can take with that, if there's guys to find, I think I skipped over your question, Go Hawks 05, about the free agent we should sign. So this is kind of pairs into that. I think you go get a guy right now who's available and out there and cheap, and who I think would help this team out, and that's Geno Atkins. I would see I can't imagine he's going to cost past a 1-year, $3 million type deal. I really can't. I would be shocked if it's anything past that. And if that's the market rate for a guy like Geno at this point, you missed out on the chance of getting Sheldon Richardson, who just signed at a 1-year, $4 million for the Vikings, which is a phenomenal rate for him on them. I mean, he's not an amazing player, but him at $4 million on a 1-year deal is great value. They could do something similar with Geno Atkins, especially with some of the question marks, frankly, that arise when you think about Poona Ford transitioning over to the 3-tech for the first time and playing just in that role predominantly. He may take off and turn into Grady Jarrett 2.0, or he may not be a guy that can get you much in the fair pass rush. So that's the guys out there available, and there's not many of them, but that's the one deal where you could sign and you still have cap space left. It wouldn't kill your cap to bring in a guy like that, but sure would round out that defensive line depth, wouldn't it? And I'm going to talk a little more of that in some with time here, Maxwell. But there's a bit of this part that's reliant on the development. Will Disley coming back a little more healthy. You're getting Rashad Penny into the mix. Marquise Blair's here. Oh, Jamal Adams back with another year within the system. There's a little reliance here on, Damian Lewis taking a step forward into his second year. So the Seahawks, all the teams do this to a degree, but right now Seattle's really heavily relying on that aspect of things, as opposed to just rounding out the roster as complete as you possibly can get it. Getting every last soldier onto that field that you can get onto that field. Seahawks Network. Yo, what's up, Brandon? Did you happen to see the next episode in my Hawk stock? A little bit more than halfway done with part 2 of episode 3. Been taking a break from uploading to focus on it. I have not had a chance, Seahawks Network, but I will check it out for sure, man. For sure. I've been just head down myself, but yeah, I'll get over there. Maxwell says the video of Sherm scared me. I've never seen him like that. I think Sherm's been known for being a pretty volatile guy. So, and I would argue a little bit on, this is a point that comes up a little bit time and time again. I think that what happened is you can kind of maybe see a little bit now why Carroll and Schneider moved away from these type of alpha type guys that are maybe a little loud, maybe a little, in your face. But I would argue that you need to put some of those guys on your football team, that those things are, that a good football team is going to carry a few dogs on it. And sometimes you don't want to stack a whole team of dogs, but sometimes if you got a team of dogs, You can be that bully. And when you run a defense that's built on you hitting and being a bully type in your way on the football field, and that is what our defense is built to do. It's not built to trick you or surprise you. It's built to say we're bigger, we're badder, we're meaner, and we're going to devastate you. Well, to do that, you don't do that with Boy Scouts. You do that with guys who are going to hit you in the chops and give it to you all day and let you know about how they're going to give it to you all day. And that was Sherman's mentality. You know, he had the Atlanta Falcon game where there was some blown coverage, got beat up over the top. He had a huge blow up over there on the sideline. I think there was something else where somebody flipped off somebody or something. It's what you get. It's an emotional sport. These guys are playing the razor's edge line of emotionality and playing with anger and ferocity. And, you know, you don't get that sometimes without a little bit of edge to the other side. It's a knife with two edges to it, not just one. Why do I? KCGM already in talks with Sherm. Well, that's interesting. That'd be an interesting fit, I guess, for him over there. Tougher to go through the AFC for Sherm. Going to be challenged a little bit more out there. I don't know about KC's fit with him as far as their defense. I know they run basically, I think, a 4-3. They do a lot of different things within that 4-3, I think. But I mean, we'll see. That would be going to basically a new defense for the first time in his career at that point. TJ, will our defense be good week 1 because we have preseason now, so we have 4 games to get it ready? Because I don't want to see a week 8 flip, a.k.a. defense is good, offense is blah. No, this year will not be replicated of what you've kind of seen, I would argue, a little bit over the last couple of years where it's taken a little bit of time for the defense to come together. We saw that in 2019, and we had to wait all the way until about the Quandre Diggs edition. Even bringing Jadeveon Clowney in at training camp, it was like we had to wait till the Quandre Diggs edition to really see that team become what it was going to become. Likewise last year, because you were bringing Jamal Adams in at the last minute, and you're bringing Jamal Adams just like you brought Jadeveon Clowney in the year before out of desperation, because the moves that you made back in the offseason weren't going to, you had realized in training camp they weren't going to hit. And so you now had to do something out of desperation. So there wasn't a lot of planning. It was more of reactive on the fly type of stuff. Well, when we come into this year, Seattle's learned their lessons kind of the last couple off seasons. Let's not go light at the pass rush, being that the pass rush is what our defense is built upon. Our defense doesn't go anywhere. We can have the greatest back end known to God, but if we don't have a front four that can generate pass rush without having to blitz, we are getting nowhere. That's the way this scheme is built. That's the way this scheme is built to operate. And having Jamal's nice and working those blitzes in there. But we got to keep in mind, with Jamal Adams getting the 9.5 sacks that he got last year and doing it in 13 games, it's a great stat. It's an awesome record to set. But you also have to understand that he did it blitzing at double the rate of what he blitzed with the New York Jets in his final year there. And the Jets are pretty much one of the most blitz-heavy teams in the entire NFL. So we really expanded beyond our identity last year, and it was at the cost of the defense as far as production and keeping opponents out of the end zone. I think they're going to fit back more into their traditional leanings, less of the blitzing, more of just the front four, and they've got the bodies to rotate in there. This is why I'm advocating for Geno Atkins as well. It'll keep that defensive line fresh, guys on rotational snaps, and you're just constantly coming in waves at that offensive line and that quarterback. And I think that would bear out real good stuff on the back end as far as interceptions, tip balls, squeezed windows, because you have so many guys now dropping into zone because you don't have to blitz. So TJ, they should be good right out the gate. Some of it will be, of course, dependent on how good the offenses they're playing are going to be. Like, what are we going to get out of the Colts? What are we going to get out of the Vikings this year? I think Tennessee is going to be pretty good. So they're getting a little bit of a stiffer test offensively, but they'll be better than we've seen to start out the gate defensively. Seahawks Network, the media hates Sherm. They've been frothing at the mouth for about 9 years now for this very moment. I'm more worried about his mental health. Me too. And they've definitely, there were those folks out there that were waiting for this type of situation for Sherman, like I said, so they could pounce, and they've pounced. But I think, I got to say, I think more of what I've seen locally from the Seattle Seahawks fan base has been support, and that's very good. I think that's the right reaction, in my opinion. The LOB ended in the worst possible way. Browner went to prison. Earl flipped off Pete. Last time he was seen in a Hawks uniform, Cam had a scary neck injury, and Sherman isn't doing well. Yeah, it's been bad. You got Earl going into the Cowboys locker room after a game, telling him to come get him in the offseason while they're on the road to trying to get back into the playoffs. There's been some brutal looks, man. There's been some brutal, just, you shake your head and go, man, that's what had so much potential. There was a chance for us and Sherm to end it with a happy ending, but it looks less likely as time goes on. I mean, if another team jumps in and wants to snag him right now, that may be the case. Certainly Seattle has leaned away from KJ Wright, and maybe leaning away from Sherman for the same reason, that they want to go younger there. Maybe they don't want to put a lot of money into that position, feeling like they want to go cheaper. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that make sense as to why they wouldn't. I would think he would help our secondary, but I don't know. It's Seahawks Network. I think this actually opens the door more to him coming back to us or San Francisco. But we'll see. We'll see. Justin Hong, hello, how's your day? My day is going great, Justin. Having a great day. Down at the lake yesterday. Probably got a little too much sun, but feeling good today. Bouncing along. Doing well. Hope you're doing as well. Please do, if you like what you're hearing, by the way, hit that like button for me, please. You will help this channel out considerably by doing so. Randall, I'll judge Sherman on what he did regarding the team. The Jim Moore outburst was BS, ripping team in public BS, but this is personal, and we all make mistakes. I'd welcome him back. Yeah, he's not a perfect person, but as somebody said above, none of us are. Let the phrase, as you said above, let not the first man cast stones in a glass house. And I think we all got to remember that a little bit when we get up on our pedestal and say, oh, I'd do it much better. I would never be like that. Let's also remember, too, this guy's, had a lot of head hits, right? I'm not claiming this is CTE stuff, but that certainly probably factors in just a tiny bit, too, if we're going to be real about it. But not a perfect guy, but a great teammate, a fantastic player, and one of the cornerstones of the Legion of Boom era. And I don't think anything that he does on this type of stuff outweighs that or washes that away. Maxwell says, it's been a while since I missed these streams. Thank you, Maxwell. Well, we'll be going quick. We'll be going more, normalized here pretty soon. So, why do I used to have a substance abuse issue and was very angry as a young man. Thankfully, my anger was not turned into violence. But for the grace of God, I go. Very well said. Why do I? And I agree. There's all moments I'm the same way. I got my simple temper. You can do things when you're in an angry state and when love's involved. And that's the most emotional stuff there is out there. That's the stuff that's going to drive you as much as anything out there to get to that state outside of a football field. So I hope he gets right. I think he will. He's a real smart guy. I feel like he'll get this figured out and be back stronger than ever. He's also very resilient, let's face that. But I bet he comes back, it gives you at least one more great year out of Richard Sherman, whether it's with us or with another team. I bet he gives somebody some really stellar play for a significant portion of the season next year. Seahawks Network, the cherry on top of the current era of Seahawks football would be if Russ forces his way out of the organization and the fans run Pete out of town. Not a cherry, complete dog crap. It would be. And I think you're echoing a little bit, Seahawks Network, of my fears. And you see this coming down the pike, and it's a thing that you want to just hit the e-brake on, and then put your foot outside the car and try to stop it with your foot and tell your buddies to do the same. And you're going, come on, guys, let's stop this. Let's hold this up. Let's let it not fit. Let's not hit to this end. It doesn't have to go. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. But there's a little bit of this that's been going for a while now and building up. And one of the first videos I did on this channel was why the Legion of Boom era, why we saw such a fast, quick end to it, and what had happened and what drove that. And man, it's just continued on a little bit since then, when we've seen diminishing returns in the win column as far as what we can really get out of our team year in, year out from what those teams were able to do prior, and we're getting to conference championships, getting to Super Bowls. We can't even sniff a conference championship now. And it is just a slow sputter, and they can turn around this year. That's the good part. I mean, I'm not trying to be negative on this, because you truly can turn around. You have put together a team that can contend right now. And if some teams have some injuries, if Aaron Rodgers retires, if Tampa Bay isn't as good, yeah, you could be the team that gets to the Super Bowl, and you could even maybe go win it if everything goes right. If you get one of those magical carpet ride type moments where everything just breaks your way, as teams kind of can happen to win a Super Bowl. I always say, don't count on the anomaly, don't count on the outlier, but it is a path that does exist potentially for this upcoming year. I just hope it doesn't go that way, Seahawks Network. I'm praying it doesn't. Maxwell Cern, Bucks or Suns? Seems like the Bucks got the momentum right now. I thought this was going to be the year here for Mr. Paul. He's been in it for so many years and had those injuries at times in the playoffs. When he had teams that looked like they were ready, And now it's just, unfortunately, it looks like they just don't have that juice right now. The Bucs kind of got him. And Giannis is, my goodness, that block he had where he covered all that ground with like 2 steps. They've shown him a few times. It's amazing when he just one dribble at half court and gets all the way up the court and dunks it. What are you supposed to do with that? He's a really good player. Really good player. And coming back off that injury shows some toughness too. JDM, I think the season is a do or die. Agreed. Too many subpar postseason outings since the Super Bowl loss. I'm hopeful it all comes together and the Hawks make a move for a few more key positions like center or even cornerback. Agreed with you 100%, JDM. That's where I stand with this, is that I look at this as a do or die season. I will go into most normal seasons always wanting to see Seattle go for it and not be worrying about the 2 to 3 year approach to things. I'm not always going to be that way. When we have a rebuilding team, I'll be patient. Like if I'm the Mariners even kind of contending this year, I'm patient. I don't take on future salary this year to try to compete this season. I trust that plan as it's going into play. Likewise, though, Seattle over the last few years has been in the middle of Russell Wilson's prime, which if you're in the middle of a Hall of Fame quarterback's prime and you're not going for it, you're doing something wrong organizationally speaking. Your strategy is a little cooked. So I think they should be going for it naturally, but I think you should even be upping that volume, turning up that heat even hotter this season, because you've got to understand, knowing this whole offseason, what's at the heart of this now, which is that you have friction between Coach Carroll and Russell Wilson. I don't care if they want to tell me it's all kumbaya. There is some friction there, and that friction can come back up if the season plays out a certain way, and then that's just going to lead to the ruins of it. If they're aggressive and do all they can, if that plays out that way, then we can look back on it and say, look, they did all they could. They used up every bit of cap space. They made every trade there was to be made. They tried to convert Russell's base to bonus. They did everything they possibly could within their means to do that, to react to this situation that was handed to him this offseason with Russell's discontent. But that's not the case yet. They've not arrived there yet. And I can understand where Schneider might be looking at me and saying, hey, there's not the guy there to make those moves to arrive there yet right now. But there will be as we go into training camp. There will be prior to the trade deadline. I can buy into that. I'm willing to be patient and watch for the moment. But I am going to go nuclear if this team soft sells it, if this team muddles its way through and sits on its cap space and tries to just be just good enough again. The feet are going to be held to the fire, and I'm going to hold them for so long in there, you're going to watch nothing but nubs, no more feet, just nubs at the end of legs. Will all be all that's left. Cooked nubs will be all that's left, because I'm going to be going, why is it that we can all see this? Why is it to the layman so clear, but to you guys, you play it so confusingly? So how could we anticipate this of happening? How could this be something you could see of coming? You could see all this stuff coming. You could see this whole situation unraveling. Maybe it's not clear as a bell, but it's pretty clear, and it should be extra clear if you're intimately involved with it, as they are. Bash, speech was top tier. Felt the happiness of 2013, but also the pain of the years after most people look at Seattle as a good team and that we haven't been through anything, but they only knew. It is, man. It's the one thing I don't get emotional on this channel too much. Takes a lot, and I'm not a sentimental guy. But I'm going to be an old man here soon. I'm knocking on the door to heading into old man city, and I'll tell you what, I can appreciate when you've got something great. And I appreciated every inch of the Legion of Boom era. Every one of those games I savored. Every part of being a dominant team I reveled in. I knew what it meant. I knew that this was not something that comes down the pike every time. But likewise, it's going to make me, as I move into the future as a fan, and I think it'll make many of in a good way, I think this is, make many of the Seahawks fans out there pushed in a way to always go out there and seek that if you're close. Not just be happy with getting close to it, near, but say, hey, we're near. If we reach a foot further here, we can grab it. We could take it. We don't have to wait for lady luck or chance or hope our opponents become lessened by injury. We can just be damn great and put it to them. I hope they go that route. JDM, also good to see you, man. First time catching the live from the start. Oh, I'd love to hear it, JDM. Glad we could get you in from the start on that. I'm hoping to get more of these streams up, and that'll help people catch even when they're not able to necessarily get live. Mark Hawk, how you doing, Mark? Haven't been on in a while. What's your big splash prediction? At least position splash. Got to be a splash signing or a trade at cornerback or defensive tackle, right? Okay. My prediction would be, Mark, one of two things as far as the big splash coming up, and you give me leeway on this to not just before training camp, but up into the trade deadline. Cornerback would be Gilmore. Seattle inquired about him last year. We know they're interested from that aspect of things. So I could see him easily coming aboard if the price comes down from what Belichick was asking last year at the trade deadline, which was a first-round pick. A defensive tackle, I tend to forecast out that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to start out rough and rugged, that they are not going to be the team that they think that they're going to be, that Jalen Hurts is not the guy. They're going to come out probably out the gates into a 1-4, 1-5 type start. Right before the trade deadline, I think at that point you would be able to go out there and nab Fletcher Cox. They still have a little bit of future issues as far as their upcoming cap space goes. It's not in tremendously great space, and they're coming on the heels of this past offseason. I think they were $75 million over the cap or so they had to already do some acrobatics to get underneath the cap this year, but they pushed a little bit of money down to next year, so they do need to kind of get out from under that a bit, and moving his contract would help them out well. Fletcher would be a great addition, a big splash signing, probably cost you in that timeline, second, third round pick type, right? Third round pick because you're getting a mid-year. But it'd be a great addition onto that defensive line at that point. Those seem to be the two guys that stand out to me. Some of this, Mark, has got to be, we need to see some teams come out the gate who we think are going to be contenders, who then fall off, who then have players that Seattle would find attractive. It's hard to make that prediction about which of those teams is going to fall in that way. Do the Chargers not take that step forward? Do the Colts completely fall on their face within that division? Do the Jacksonville Jaguars take a step forward and push? It's all that kind of mechanics of the season that have to play out a little bit before the deadline. And if I was making a guess and a prognostication here, I'd say Schneider's probably sitting here right now not liking the market as it sits here currently and the options he has available via trade or signing, and he wants to wait for a little bit of the murkiness to get cleared up, a little bit of the season to play out so that a few more teams enter the fray, and he feels like he's going to get a much better player at that time down the line than he's going to get right now, and for better value. And history has proven that to be true for the most part. Obviously, they paid a little bit of high-end prices for Jamal last year. But aside from that, the Clowney deal was a third-rounder. The Quandre Diggs deal was a fifth-rounder. They tend to stay pretty on those late deals. They don't tend to have to give up a ton. The Seahawks Network not going to be able to chat anymore, but we'll be listening. Thank you, Seahawks Network. Well, I appreciate you hopping in. Mark, John makes a big move seemingly yearly at the start of the year. He does, Mark, and that very well could come this year. It's hard to see it at the start of training camp unless it's one of these teams that's a contender falling back and away from it, thinking that they're not going to be, or it could be also what you get in training camp is you'll get a rookie who comes in or a second-year player who's taken that next step forward, and now they have, instead of this embedded veteran at a position who's costing a lot, you get the new young guy that the team wasn't quite sure on in the offseason would be ready to roll, who's now ready to roll, pushing that guy along. The Denver Broncos with Von Miller, for instance. I think Denver's going to go for it. They may end up getting Aaron Rodgers. He certainly wouldn't be traded at that point. But what if a young pass rusher came into Denver and really lit it up? Does Von Miller now suddenly become available at that point? Maybe potentially. So there's those kind of things play out, I think, Mark, but that's the part that gets harder than this to predict, because it's hard. Who's going to be that player that takes that step forward, who hasn't shown it yet on the field, but will be showing it on the field and not just in flashes, but fully bloomed come the start of training camp. Go Hawks. The summer is about to kick into high gear. NBA free agency, NFL training camp. I got a couple of vacations to go on. Going to be pretty awesome. Well, congrats, man. Congrats. Vacations are always fun. And that's what's up. You got to get that in if you're a Pacific Northwesterner, at least. You got to get your vacation fun in when you can. The summertime, get out in that sun when you can, because Lord knows we're in for 9 months of black and darkness. But awesome to hear you're going to have some fun. Yeah, I'm stoked too. I'm more hyped this year for, I think, any of the last couple of seasons. This year's got me more hyped than any. There was always questions going into last year. You saw it even leading up into, I was hopeful that the Jamal Adams deal could make it done, but not one move doesn't usually save you. And the year before, it was kind of like, this team's got a couple of holes going into this year. But this year's a year where you really do look at them and go, man, they got a squad here. They do. I think it is a contending team, and it's a team with less holes than I think you've previously come into recent seasons on, which is nice to see. Austin Latimer, how you doing, Austin? Hey, man, loved your video on Marquise Blair recently. Do you think you'll make more videos on individual players like that in the future? Thanks. Yes, Austin, I do think I'm going to be. I'm shooting for during this season to be actually doing 2 live stream shows, and then we're going to do a Hawks Nest episode show. And that episode show will concentrate, I think, a little more on the players and their play and what they're doing on the field during the year. I've thought recently about doing a Poona Ford video because I think that there's a chance that, Austin, when Poona Ford first came up, I was really high on him out of training camp because the reports and the scouting reports and what you're hearing about him. And I was wondering a little bit if he could be a guy like Grady Jarrett, who I don't think was a super highly drafted player himself because of the same issues of being a little bit of an undersized defensive tackle. But Grady, from the jump on his career, has been operating from the 3-tech and operating from the 3-tech within the Dan Quinn defense, within the Coach Carroll defense, within the 4-3 over defense. And so I wonder if in moving Poona over to that spot, if he doesn't have some potential to tap into that Grady-like spot, that Grady-like talent, to really be kind of a force over there at the 3-tech. And Grady Jarrett is not a guy who sits into that top tier of 3-tech defensive tackles. He's not going to be better than obviously Aaron Donald or Chris Jones or probably there's even maybe 1 or 2 other guys probably still ahead of him on that list at the 3-tech. Like Stephon Tuitt, I guess, kind of he's a 3-4 defensive end, I guess. So that doesn't really count, but kind of does the same kind of stuff for them with his build and size. But if Jarrett's kind of right below those guys. He's at the top of that next tier right below him. And he's a really good run stuffer and he's an upper level run stuffer, but just a decent pass rusher. And Poona's got, I think, some of the same kind of that skill set. A little undersized, but he's going to win on the leverage game, quick first step, also pairing that with some speed. So he's a guy that I've got excited. I think I will do a video on him, Austin. And I'm going to try to do some more. I've just been trying to think I don't want to drum up ones that I'm trying to create content with. I want to create content where it's like I got something really to say on a player and almost kind of want to hit it like a thesis. But appreciate you watching. Thank you. TJ, I'm pretty sure the Steelers have a half of an honor, but it's okay. I'll be back later. I thought they did too. I think they do. Sure, it makes sense. They'd have a lot of guys on there if they do. Why do I so ready for the season to start and bury this? Seattle is a team in decline. BS. 2007, 9-7, 2018, 10-6, 2019, 11-5, 2020, 12-4 division winner. One strange look in decline. Yeah, and I don't see it as a decline at all because I want to make sure I'm being clear right away of what I say at the two. It's just that there's this ending to the era and where that's going is almost a different from where I see potentially, I guess, the year. But no, they've not been in a decline, that they just haven't been able to get, especially when you look at it through the playoff emblem of things. It's one thing if you got a couple years you can't do things in the playoffs. When you get to like 6 years and you're getting in the playoffs, you're not really doing much, not making much noise or it just kind of gets people going, okay, well, this doesn't seem to be a team that has that same potential of those past teams. And those past teams were great teams. It's hard high water mark to make when you're talking about trying to reach the level of former greatness. That's for sure. Randall, safety and tight end 2 are the deepest positions on the team. D-line 2, if we use correctly, both of them can be a difference maker for us. Hard to scheme for, excited to see how it shakes out. Agreed. And I'm very high, and going back through past video on Seahawks film from last year, I think a lot of us felt like Will Disley, well, he's okay. He was missing a little something last year, but boy, he still had some good catches. He still had some moments, some of those flashes that he had showed in the first couple of years. I'm still really high, and Gerald Everett's going to be, I think, a fantastic addition. Just a talent that we haven't had at the tight end position before. And in Colby Parkinson, man, there's a lot of question and wonder as to what he's going to be, what he could be, what his talent level is. Is he just a red zone threat guy for Russell down near the goal line? But you got some intriguing guys there. And if we're going to talk about a potential trade out there that exists as well, Randall, you've got Ertz, from Philadelphia sitting out there that potentially could also be on the trade market, and they may end up adding him as well. I know Seattle has shown a little bit of interest in that guy too. Randall says, are there 5 wide receivers you'd take over DK? I'm not sure I'd swap him for anyone in the league. I wouldn't swap him for anyone in the league, but some of that is also a little bit of the potential he's going to top into and when he's going to top into that full potential. I think it is almost by about year 4 or 5, you're really seeing that, 1,600 yards a season, 16 touchdowns, that real just prolific type numbers that you're putting up at the wide receiver. I feel like next year's going to be a little bit below that, which you'll have other receivers just put up a little bit more. But I would go Hopkins, But again, Hopkins is getting older, so it's like, does Father Time hit him this next year? But I do think Hopkins, Tyreek, I would put him above Stephon Diggs. And I don't, Steelers don't got anybody that I would give it to them. I mean, like I said, maybe top 7, but it may be hard to not even get him in the top 5. He's real close with Mike Evans, I think. They're very close as far as, who is or isn't better there. But yeah, as I'm really thinking about it, well, Devontae Adams, so he's above him. That'd be a 3. He would absolutely be in there. But beyond that, hard to think of anybody past 3. So like 4 seems like the spot that I'd probably put DK right now. Somebody else will have some good names to put on there, but we'll see. Randall, are there 3-1-2? My prediction for every award for the 2021-2022 season is MVP Patrick Mahomes. Going on a limb there, aren't you? 3-1-2. Offensive Player of the Year, Alvin Kamara. Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. Cornerback, Comeback Player of the Year, Dak Prescott. And Coach of the Year, Sean McVay. Oh, a little salt in the wound over there on us, huh? 3-1-2, Aaron Donald, just sacked Russell Wilson in the sim. Pretty realistic. Laughing out loud. Well, it's, they refer to he'll get the sacks. We'll still win. It's all good. Who's my, I'll go MVP. I mean, Mahomes is kind of a boring pick, right? I mean, that's the easy pick to go that route with it. If I want to go with an MVP this year, it does have to go to an offensive player, doesn't it? It's not going to a running back, that's for sure. Yeah, Mahomes is probably the guy. I'm gonna go with a surprise then. I'm gonna go with your MVP is gonna be Justin Herbert, and your offensive player of the year. I'm gonna have to think about that one. Defensive player of the year, I think Myles Garrett's a good pick, and I think I probably agree with you on that. He's gonna have Jadeveon over there, and that's gonna remove those double teams to a degree. Because I think once you single block Jadeveon, you're in trouble. So I think he's got a great chance to be that guy over there on that. Comeback Player of the Year, Dak, no brainer. Coach of the Year, I'm gonna give it to actually Coach Carroll this year, and he's not gonna get it because he does anything different this year as a coach, but because Waldron's gonna make his offense look good. People aren't going to be able to nitpick Carroll onto the way his offense plays. His special teams will be fantastic. His defense will be great. Seattle will be probably, I believe, sub-dominant. So I think that finally gets him through the door of winning Coach of the Year. There's my one homer pick within that. Randall says, name 2 guys most likely to make it to their first Pro Bowl in 2021. I'd say Lewis and Reed. Damian Lewis would be my one guy to say I think he was almost a Pro Bowler last year. I think he was right on the edge. Who would be my other guy? I'm gonna get on the Disley train this year. I was just talking about him, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I think this is the year Disley gets it together. And I think it's the year within an offense that's built towards utilizing the tight ends. And because I think Gerald Everett's going to get a lot of attention when he's on the field, I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities. He's played now 3 years with Russell Wilson, all this offseason throwing together, the connection that they have. If he remains healthy, I would put Damian Lewis and Disley as my 2 guys that are really the guys to get to that next step of being a Pro Bowler this upcoming year. I feel like there's one more I've got in there, and that'd be you mentioned DJ Reed. I'd lean more to Achillea Witherspoon. Achillea Witherspoon's a guy with that typical size, prototypical length that the Seattle Seahawks look for in cornerbacks. He's a guy who came into the NFL at a very young age. He's only 25 years old here as we come into this season. He was just starting to finally put it together for the 49ers last year and tap into that potential that made him a former third-round pick. He's a guy within this defense already understanding how to play within this defense, being that they're coming from the Niners and some of the similarities that they do in this, especially on the back end. I think he's a guy who could surprise some people this year and turn into a Pro Bowl type year if things break just the right direction. But those would be my 3 guys. Why do I? The KC thing was a joke, a bad one. Oh, okay, good. Well, it's a good joke, actually, because I'd be like, the way KC's operated this offseason with the aggressiveness that they've taken on, that definitely would be the type of move that they would be jumping out there and making. They'd look at it as a depressed asset, and they'd go out there and they'd snag it. and that's what they've kind of done a lot in this offseason, I feel like, especially when you look at what they've done with the offensive line. On the fly, needing to rebuild it almost from scratch. Marty M.F. Williams, do you expect to see 3 safety looks with Diggs, Adams, Blair, or Neal? I'm unsure about this, Marty, as far as how Seattle's going to play it. Last year, when you had Neal playing really well and then Jamal Adams came back onto the field after his injury, Seattle did operate at times with Neal on the field. It felt like there was a little bit more of like dime situations. Neal would be that 4th cornerback out there. I didn't see a lot to my eyes of them moving one of the safeties to linebacker and then bringing the other one on, which is a little bit probably in the direction that I would lean. Looking at Jamal Adams' snap counts with the Jets, especially over the course of his last season, he played some snaps at linebacker. He did. So he's got it in him. And I've mentioned that I don't have a lot of trust and faith that Jordan Brooks is going to take a step forward in coverage. I think he's always going to kind of struggle with that element of his game. It's just the nature of things where he's not great, I think, in zone. He's better in man-to-man, but he's not going to play a lot of man-on-man in the Seattle scheme. So to me at that point, if you can cover that up a little bit and on passing downs, get another defender in there who can actually cover a little bit, that would be advantageous. That would be the move for me that you make. You bring either Jamal Adams up into linebacker and then Marquise Blair out at strong safety, or flip it vice versa, or find a way to be unique and innovative and move a guy as an in-between position. Maybe he's standing between the safety and the linebacker. Whatever you've got to do, get the best talent out on the football field. Don't allow your best talent to sit because you're trying to fit yourself within traditional football ways and means. The best guys out there, and especially, man, you get Jamal Adams, Blair, Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner all on the field at once with Quandre Diggs. You've got a nice little collection of hitters. And the thing to remember about this defense is it's a defense that bends but does not break. It's a defense that allows for the short completion, and then it's reliant on everyone rallying to the ball. But within that rallying is, hey, make sure you bring your hammer when you arrive. And you'll watch this on all that old tape going back to 2012, 13. Those guys are all coming up trying to lay a hit. Everyone is trying to hurt the ball carrier in a nice way every single play. The reason you do that is you wear those offensive players down. Those guys get those little alligator arms as the game goes along. They start making business decisions. That's what you want to see. And I think that's you start putting enough of those guys on the field, and it's been a missing aspect to our teams recently. We just haven't had the same kind of type of hitters back there that we did. But getting those guys all on the field at once, you're going to be putting some people lights out. That's for sure. Rick Cossey says, any news about Aldon Smith? There was an arraignment that went down, Rick, but there's not been a lot that's been built upon beyond that. So it's really still in a basic point at this point. The commissioner's office is really the gavel that's got to come down, and that can come down at any time. It's at the commissioner's leisure to make the determination for suspension. He could very well let him practice through all training camp and the offseason, and then it gets into start of the year, and then they determine, oh, he suspended the first 4 games of the year. I do expect that there'll be some kind of suspension that come down because Aldon is a repeat guy, but we just haven't heard anything as of yet concretely. But at least the arraignment gives us a step in the direction of finding out how this is going to break out with the law, how that will really, what he's really convicted of or not convicted of or let off the hook of. And that's probably why the commissioner's office has waited. And once that comes down, we'll really know what the determination will be. Randall says, DJ is going to slide over to the left side. I kind of like him on the right side. I do too. I would tend to like him staying, I think, where he was. But I can get why they did it. They want Witherspoon's length on the other side because they want to squeeze down the strong side of the formation. That's why you didn't used to have Richard Sherman, for instance, a lot of times travel with a receiver. So they want to take one side of that field and they want to squeeze it and make it the side of the field that the quarterbacks and the offense are going to tend to lean to, being the strong side, the right side, your right-handed, strong sides, essentially. Randall says, the Legion of Boom was wild, man. They always pushed it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. It's very true. Very true, man. That blade's got 2 sides to it. It does. AI says, I like Adams, Diggs, and Blair on the field together for a 2nd and 3rd and longs, with Adams filling in the will. Oh, AI, you're going to make me dream right now. You're making me dream, Israel. I would love to see the same type of thing. And the type of, if you had creative coaches who wanted to use players without having to say you're this position and you're that position, but find a way to mix them right and confuse offenses, this would be the personnel groupings to be able to do it with. And they're just, if you were a little bit creative, you could really kind of, I think, take advantage of it. You will see, at least at the base, right out the gate, Blair will be out on the field as the dime corner. So it'll be your fourth cornerback in dime situations, I think, out the gate. But other than that, he's due to be sitting on the bench right now. So they do need to get creative to find a way to get him on the field. Matthias23451 says, God, Legion of Boom era players fell off. Wish the best for those Seahawks legends. I do too. It's nothing but love for me. You guys gave us the one championship we have from our football team in this town, the one championship that I've been alive to really see. I've got nothing but gratitude in my heart for every one of those guys and giving us that as a city, knowing how hard that is. It's tough. There's a lot of franchises that don't even have a Super Bowl, haven't even gotten to a Super Bowl. So we got to always put in perspective. Go Hawks 05 says, holy crap, Paul Gasol is still playing for Spain. Paul's going, well, it's not that bad when they got to just come in and play a couple minutes, then he gets on the bench, goes and have a cappuccino at halftime with a little bit of wine, Show them young bucks how to do it, just stand in the lane and flick up hook shots. Bodine, which Seattle could trade for Sterling Shepard? Like you said, we need another proven wide receiver. I'm 100% sure we'll make a trade for someone, but before the end of the season. How do you feel about Justin Houston? Oh, Leland Kimball, one of my members. Thank you for your $10 chat. You are awesome. Appreciate it. Bodine, Sterling Shepard's been a guy that's been a fairly productive receiver. I think he operates best from the inside in the slot. You're kind of stacked a little bit right now, in my opinion, in slot receivers a little bit, where we need a little more of the traditional, to me, a bigger guy on the outside is a little bit more of where I'd lean. I don't know if you went out and got Golden Tate right now and put him out there, that he gives you a lot less than what you'd get from Sterling Shepard, and you wouldn't have to trade for Tate to go get him. But he's a sudden guy. He's a guy who runs, real sharp routes, pretty good hands overall. Never been a real difference maker for me. Just doesn't do a ton for me, Bodine, as far as a player goes. I'd want to probably look at other receiving options aside from him, especially just leaning towards more of an outside guy. When it comes to Justin Houston, yeah, I like me some Justin Houston. He's been a very efficient pass rusher. He was a very good he was an amazing pass rusher for the Chiefs. Then he's been a very good pass rusher for the Colts. I think if you fit him in here into a rotational role, it'd be great. Right now, you don't really have a space for him with Aldon Smith here. If something happens with Aldon, though, I would love to have him on the bat phone and say, okay, we lost out on Aldon. You want to come in here? And a guy who can come in and give you 15, 20% of the snaps, passing only situations, and maybe give you 7 or 8 sacks over the course of a year. Be really productive and efficient in that role. So I like Justin Houston. Long liked his game. I feel like Kansas City kind of made the wrong choice in not bringing him back on a short 2-year, $10 million type deal. And instead they paid the stars, suns, and moons for Frank Clark, which is just probably in retrospect, they would have gone the other direction. But Houston's a good player, solid guy, even though he's a little bit older. And those older pass rushers can still keep and maintain productivity even into their mid-30s. Randall says it's better to burn out than fade away. Very, very well put, Randall, for sure. Benelli, how you doing, Benelli? If we don't go for gold this year, I'm done with Pete and his system. Benelli, if we don't, I might very well be right there with you. When I say I will be willing to go nuclear, I'm going to be willing to go, I'm tired of this. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not taking it anymore. I'm going to be going at it from that standpoint. And certainly I was nibbling the edges of it through the last half of the year last year and what I was watching unfold. But it will go from a nibble to a full bite to voraciously chewing and tearing and ripping at, because the issues and problems that have come up with this team over the course of time, and there's not many of them, but they're very distinct and they stand out like a big fat mole coming off a skin, right? If you ever saw Uncle Buck and he goes into the principal's office and you talk to the principal and she's got this mole and every word he ends up saying has mole in it because he can't, that's basically what Coach Carroll has and the issues and problems he has. There's things that he does very well. There's things this organization does very, very well. It's not all doom and gloom, but the things that haven't worked sometimes there's a very slow, almost not methodical is not even the word, but just a molasses-like slow to embrace, oh, this is a problem, let's try to fix this. How many years do we have Tom Cable here and that offensive line, and Russell Wilson he's still getting to a degree pounded a little bit. They're starting to kind of embrace it now, bringing in Gabe Jackson this offseason, but even still, they didn't hammer it. They didn't go find a center on top of it or fill out the offensive line depth so well with extra guys behind who are really good guys behind the frontline guys. They still kind of are slow, still kind of slow in getting that message to land in the back of their brain. I hope it does. But this would be the biggest lesson that they failed to learn over their time. Of all the other ones, those were all small little issues. Oh, our offensive line doesn't block well. We started filling out a team full of Boy Scouts because we got tired of all the boat rockers here at the end of the Legion of Boom era. We can't maybe run the 1987 offense. Well, let's give it 3 or 4 years. Okay, yeah, we can't run the 1987 offense. Okay, it's agreed. We agree on that. All right, yeah. Why'd it have to take 4 years? Okay, and that's where we've arrived here now, is they've taken all this time, but now you got the biggest issue of all, losing your Hall of Fame quarterback at the back end of his prime, a coach who's just about on his way to retirement, who may have lost his fastball, so to speak, as a head coach, and now is sort of just kind of getting along with it. I hope that's not the case in where this goes, but agreed with you, Benelli, in that I'm going to be really, really annoyed if it plays out this way. If they didn't go for it, if they stood pat and they said, we're just going to trust in the development of LJ Collier and Jordan Brooks, and we think Damian Lewis switching over to the left guard is going to be fantastic, and Ethan Postic's going to turn into an amazing player in year 5 for the first time, and we're going to hope this guy stays healthy, who's never been healthy, and we're going to say that they're going to have earned their brow beating at that point. They will have earned it. 312 says Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. I love it, 312. That's coming from a Steelers fan, folks. Randall says, maybe this sounds weird, but seeing Sherman go through this makes him more relatable. I see Russ with these photo ops recreating a Princess Diana photo, contrived. Hope he produces on the field. Russell and Sierra's photo ops are just, oh my God. Yeah, I like the relatability too, and he does me as well. And look, he's been on pedestal for quite a bit of time. He's kept his nose clean and done like a lot of great things. Can't be held by his worst moment. Benelli, we had the best team in football in 2019, but injuries killed us. 2020, we underperformed when it counted most. We have a year left in this window. I agree. Yeah, you were the most injured team in the entire NFL in 2019, and we were actually, Benelli, the 5th most injured team in the entire NFL last year. This is one of the reasons why I think you've got to stack the depth up a little bit. We've got to anticipate the injury situation a little bit. Hey, last 2 years have taught us we're probably going to be a top 10 team as far as injuries are concerned. Maybe you want to round out the depth because of that. I hope they do. But yes, this is going to be the year of decision. This is the year of it's a make or break it. It's the year to me of we're either talking rebuild mode next year, or we're talking about a team that just won a Super Bowl or got close to a Super Bowl. It's really one of those two endings, and there's not a third or fourth. That's it. It's one of two ways it'll probably go. Matt Schleiper, how you doing, Matt? I have a feeling this year is the last great run to many early playoff exits. Well, if we get one more run, Matt, of a Super Bowl run, and maybe give a Super Bowl, I'll take a couple of playoff exits on that. You give me a Super Bowl every few years, I'll take me some playoff exits. But you're not stacked horribly for the future beyond this year if Russell stays. But that's the key ingredient here, and that's the one that we don't know. If you come off a year where you're middling, where you're the same you've been for the last 6 seasons, Russell Wilson probably moves on. And then at that point, Matt, to your point, they're bringing in a young quarterback who still has a relatively good team, but Dwayne Brown's a year older, moving on to retire. It's a little bit more dicier. It's a little more dicier at that point. It's not as certain, which is why, again, just to reiterate, you got to hit it hard this year. Pound that nail into the wood. Bodine says we never get a pass when our players get injured. No, we don't. It's one thing I'm going to talk a little bit with, I'm sure, tomorrow, Second Chance Sports. Let me talk with him a little bit because I know he's going to mention the 49ers being the most injured team last year and pointing to a lot of that as being, some of the reasoning why they weren't good last season. But as I've seen with my team, we don't get that benefit of the doubt. We're expected when we're beat up to hell and we're still good, people say, whatever, you guys got injured. Who cares? You still weren't anything. Well, we got beat up a bit. It headed us off at the pass. It certainly has come up. It's valid. But they've still done more with that injured situation than other teams do with theirs. And the Niners last year completely kind of fell into a 8-8 status type team, a mediocre type team once those injuries were sustained, whereas Seattle in 2019, suffering a very similar, if not worse, injury situation, was able to not only get to the playoffs, but win a playoff game and take, the Green Bay Packers right up into the brink in Lambeau. Go Hawks 05. I have some great deadline trade targets, the guys on underwhelming teams that are playing on the franchise tag like Allen Robinson. Maybe. I'd love to get Allen Robinson in here, Go Hawks. He's a guy who, we were just talking about receivers, he might be number 4 ahead of DK. I might push DK to 5 at that point because Allen certainly has probably earned his way. He's had the least amount of catchable balls thrown his way over the last 3 years. He's had guys throwing him the football where Trubisky is just, the tape you watch on him is so brutal to watch. The guy has never stepped into a throw in his entire life. Trubisky's never stepped into a throw. I don't know why he backfoots it every time, but he does. It's just a horrible, takes velocity off his throw. It just removes his accuracy. I don't know why he has continued to do it through all these years, but it has not gotten fixed. But Robinson's not had the opportunity to have those, those chances to play with an elite quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how Fields does with him. That's a good pairing of skill sets. Fields throws a great deep ball. He's going to give Allen some chances out there to really shine this year. I don't know if the Bears really want to let him go, though. I think the Bears will probably see that pairing working out nice, and they'll probably pay Robinson the money. They've got a now cheap rookie quarterback on a rookie deal who might be really good. That does then allow you to pay your guys at that point. You don't have to let a lot of guys walk because they're going to cost too much. 312 says, predict the winner for every division in the NFL. All right. Of course, I'm taking my Seahawks in the NFC West. No doubt about it. We'll go with... Now, the Packers, you got to give me a little leeway here. This depends on where Rodgers is. If Rodgers plays, the Packers are still going to win that division. If Rodgers doesn't play, I actually think that the Minnesota Vikings end up winning that division. Tampa Bay, obviously, is going to win the NFC South. Probably no doubt about that one. I do think Carolina is going to be one of the more improved teams in the NFL. I think their defense is going to be sick. Really hard team to play. One of those teams that you're happy doesn't show up on your schedule. There's a collection of teams that I'm happy we're not playing this year, and that's one of them that I put on that list. So that would be them in the NFC East. Oh my God, predicting the NFC East, right? In the NFC East, I'm going to go with... I'm going to go with the Washington football team because I do think their defense is going to continue to be dominant, and I think they've got a good running game. A good running game with a dominant defense usually gets you out to a winning record. And I liked Antonio Gibson coming out of Memphis, and he did nothing but just build on that coming into his first year. So that would be where I'd go with those 3 teams. In the AFC, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs, though they're pushed really, really up to the brink with it by the Chargers in that division this year. I'm going to go with the Browns in the AFC North. In the AFC South, I got to think about that one. In the AFC East, I'll go with the Buffalo Bills, obviously there. And I have to think on the AFC South. I got to think about that one. I almost lean towards the Colts, but only just almost out of... only just because there's really not anybody that jumps forward there that really stands out. They almost win it by default just because it's kind of the weakest division in football. But I'd go with that. Now I'd lean with them, I guess. Connor Jennings, the Rams are ass. How are we doing on there? Oh, 45-24. We got a barn burner game in this one, man. Offensive shootout. Offensive shootout, folks. But I agree with you, Connor. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. I think they're a game worse this year, the Rams. Matthias, best 3 moves you could see is making into the early part of the best 3 moves you could see us making into the early part of the season. Well, if you could somehow find a way to get both Fletcher, Cox, and Gilmore, that'd be great. You probably got to pick between one of the 2 of them. So I would probably pick. I'd probably pick Gilmore, and if the Giants fall off this year, I'd target Saquon Barkley, especially if he's back to being healthy on a stretch run. If you could pull him in, being he's on a franchise tag, he's on his 5th-year option, I believe, which would put him in a position to be a free agent. I don't know if the Giants are really going to want to pay him with the injury history he had, even if he has a great productive year going into it this season. He'd be a guy I would target. And I think that there's been a little bit of a falling out between the Saints and Michael Thomas. If there was some way with Michael Thomas that you could make that trade with them, if you aren't able to get much out of Eskridge and then fit Thomas into the slot, where he would just naturally, I think, just be a really good addition in there. Those are kind of three out there that I would throw for assembly of moves, something like that. Something like that. GoX05, I saw that Cliff Averill was working out with Alden Smith, and B said that he believes this is our deepest line since the LOB. I would 100% agree with him. This is you. I've mentioned, I think as well, Go Hawks. I think at least as far as we stand on the edges, there's a lot to be determined on the defensive tackle position. But as we stand out on the edges right now, we have the potential to have the best pass rushing edge rush that we've ever seen in Seattle. That goes beyond the Legion of Boom era days. Because you've stacked so much depth behind guys and quality depth. And if one of your young guys pops, if Alden Robinson takes a step forward, if Darrell Taylor could be a monster from the jump, if Rasheem Green or LJ Collier comes forward to go with what you have in Hyder and Dunlap and Alden Smith and Benson Mayowa, you got a lot of certainty with a little bit of hopeful development rather than leaning all on the hopeful development. It's a nice little mix, and it has really that potential. We've never put this much talent onto the edge. We've got more talent right now than we've ever had. If they're able to tap into that or not, it certainly is the uncertain part at play here. But there is no doubt about it, in my opinion. I think it is the most talented. You look at those Super Bowl teams and Averill and Bennett and Bruce Irvin and Chris Clemens, that's solid, and Brennan McBain's okay. But this would potentially surpass that. This would potentially surpass it. It's on paper right now. I'll acknowledge that. This is all on paper, but it's a paper tiger. It's growling, Randall says, remember going into the 2013, there was a pic of Sherm on a jet ski watching rookie minicamp. He was invested in the team. He and the LLB went to Chelan and bonded in the summer. That had to be organic, young and hungry. One, putting together the best mic'd up moments. I'm putting together this video in the background on things, and it's the thing that stood out to me is you can feel the special relationship these guys had between each other. And it's not just unusual in football, it's unusual in sports to have that kind of camaraderie. It was a lot more normal back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when teams really remained together for a long period of time and there wasn't as much players bouncing around the league to different teams. You saw more of that, but they really had tapped into that bond that's so hard that teams have to strive for to achieve. They've got to make it work. They got to force it to happen. But when you combine that bond with the talent, that was a beautiful, perfect fit for this as well, this scheme, and what Coach Carroll wanted to accomplish defensively speaking. That's how you got something special. And it's so hard to achieve one of those things, much less all three of those things at the same time. And it's a lightning in a bottle that you just don't see come down the pike. And we'll not see in Seattle again another unit probably with that kind of acclaim or that type of team in that same way. We may see Super Bowl winners come down the pike, but not with almost like I mentioned the dynastic sort of potential that they had within them, and it's probably going to be more of things coming together slowly. Then you get there and it's a one-off type situation, Matthias 23451 predictions for the NFC and AFC standings at the end of the year. So yeah, I got those teams we just set on. I think the Chiefs, man, so much as this is based upon Matthias too, if Rodgers plays or not. Let's just operate like Rodgers is with the Packers and not in the AFC. So that does give the Chiefs probably the first round bye. Though that's no guarantee this year. I think they're going to get really pushed this year. It's going to be up against it, especially Cleveland is going to be a surpriser, I think, on that roll of things. I'm going to make a prediction that Cleveland, here's my prediction on this for the AFC. This is a surprise prediction for you folks. I've been on Cleveland for a while, and I told you guys last year, y'all laughed at me last year, but I told you guys as we were leading into the season that the Cleveland Browns were going to make the playoffs. And everybody laughed at me and said that I was crazy and I was insane. Well, here's my next insane prediction as it pertains to the Browns. They are going to reach the Super Bowl this year. And I think that they do it for the reason that we talked about a second ago with one of the teams being that you got a team playing good defense and they can run the ball. It's a great combination, leads to a lot of wins. They've stacked that defense up. They've stacked that offense up with really good players across the board. They could get into a playoff game against the Chiefs and they could just run the ball constantly and keep Mahomes off the field and almost beat the Chiefs single-handedly by that method, by just keeping Mahomes cold and out of rhythm and only getting so many series throughout the course of the game. They've got 2 running backs deep. Both of those guys are awesome. I think they could be the surprise team coming out of the AFC as far as Super Bowl, not just getting the playoffs, but actually being a Super Bowl type contending team. I know that people think the Bills will take that step forward maybe this year, or even the Chargers are kind of a du jour favorite team right now for everybody to predict. But I think that the Browns have done some really smart things in how they built. And when you look at it, I know they lost Sheldon Richardson, but when you look at having a guy like Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney on either side of each other, I go back to 2015 season with the Broncos where they paired up DeMarcus Ware. He was getting a little bit older in his career, was still a young, up-and-coming, vibrant Von Miller. And they had Malik Jackson and Derek Wolfe on the inside. They had some guys on the inside as well. But those 2 guys on the outside were really what made that pass rush work for them. And when you stack just those 2 things up alone, if they're that special, if there's those guys who if you leave him single blocked, you're not going to be able to block him. And those are those type of players who I think are going to be like that. So, I'm going to go with those predictions, Matthias. I'm going to go with the Browns, and of course in the NFC it's easy. Seahawks win the division. I think that we have a good chance to get that home field bye. Don't know if we will. Maybe we got to go on the road to Tampa Bay. I think Tom is getting older. He had to play with it. We learned now he played with an MCL all last year, torn MCL. Tom Brady did. He is getting older. What happens when he gets the one injury he can't play through? He is getting injured. It's just when's that one going to arrive? And if he gets battered down, we get that first seed. So I'd put us with the Seahawks against the Browns in the Super Bowl. We win it because we are built to stop the run first and foremost, as the Browns are going to try to run the ball first and foremost. You put it in Baker's hand at that point. Seahawks win. Seahawks win. Raise that Lombardi one more time. 312, Kamara or Cook? Who would you rather have? And thoughts on Nola's playoff chances next season? I take Alvin Kamara because he's so unique as a running back. He just 312. There's not another running back in NFL history that quite looks like Kamara. He's got some flashes of other guys you could kind of maybe look at a little bit, but he really is just a unique beast out there. And what he gives you out of the backfield, and it just, I love it. Cook is a guy that I've been slow to come around on. I've got to own this 312. I think I did a little bit miss the boat on him coming out of college. In the respect, I didn't think he was going to tap into what he's been in the pros. Probably should have seen it, but he didn't run a really fast 40. He didn't do much as far as jumping ability goes. Didn't show a lot of short area explosion with some of the short area stuff drill-wise that he did. So he had you concerned a little bit about what you were getting there. But no doubt about it, he's a good player too. He's a great running back as well. But I'll take Kamara all day long. Randall says, bold take, Parkinson leads the tight end room in touchdowns with 6. Ooh, that is a bold take, Randall. That's a big bold take. Everett's going to get targeted a couple times, and Disley's a favorite down there with Russ. That's a bold take. I don't know if I can sign off on that one. I do think Parkinson's going to get a couple. I think he's going to get a couple of high point chances down there near the end zone with Russ. I think they know that's basically his biggest skill that he brings to the table. You want to take advantage of it. 312. And I'm a little bit behind on the chat. Sorry, folks. If you're new in here, I just take a little bit behind the chat because I try to react to everybody's chat. And Leland Kimball, you are awesome. Thank you so much for your $10 donation. I appreciate it. 3-2 says, thoughts on every part of the Seahawks roster heading into next season: linebacker, secondary, pass rush, quarterback, running back, offensive line, receiving core. Linebackers are concerned, especially the will linebacker position. I don't trust in Cody Barton. Times he's been on the football field, he's not shown a lot. He's supposed to be one of the better cover linebackers on the team. Haven't seen it. I don't trust Jordan Brooks in coverage, but he'll be an absolute hammer in the running game, no doubt about it. Bobby Wagner will be steady for you in the middle, if maybe at this point a little unspectacular at times, kind of holding the water until you get to the playoffs and show out. If you guys noticed last year with Bobby Wagner, he had an amazing playoff game. It was a little bit like he was saving a little bit of reserve in the tank for when he really, truly needed it. So I'm still perfectly happy with what you got at Bobby Wagner. I have some trepidations with the Sam linebacker role. Don't know what you've got right now in Darrell Taylor. If he can play that role, don't really have a really suitable backup behind him to insert in. Maybe Bruce Irvin could come in if you needed to do the bat line call to a player at that point. So there's some concerns at linebacker, but I think you get by with where you're at with it. I'm perfectly happy with the defensive line outside of maybe getting a guy or two in there. I think they're great, as what we've talked about. Receiver position's a huge concern right now, one of the biggest on the team along with center. I think those are two places where you're like, back up behind Dwayne Brown is sketchy at tackle. You're worried there. Running back, if Rashad Penny's healthy, I think he'll be fine with Chris Carson and him as a tandem. They were a pretty good tandem in 2019, right up until the point that Rashad Penny got hurt. But I think they could reclaim that as well. But tight ends I'm perfectly happy with. They're solid. They should be good. Safety position you feel great about. And corner, I'd like to go get another guy. Be it Richard Sherman, be it Stephon Gilmore. I think you can do a little bit more there. Pass rush is absolutely great right now, though, especially if Aldon Smith is here. If Aldon Smith's not here, then I want to go get Justin Houston. Random again says Jamal Adams, Defensive Player of the Year, 12 combined sacks, interception, 3 house calls. I can see it. And that's the way you get to be a Defensive Player of the Year, is if you stack up a bunch of tackles, a bunch of TFLs, you get yourself 3 or 4 or 5 interceptions, and then you put 10 plus sacks on the board as well. That's how you'll get yourself a Defensive Player of the Year trophy. That's how it's done. 3-1-2 says Pete Carroll's actually a good dark horse, the Coach of the Year. Oh, okay. I'm glad we agree on that one, 3-1-2. Bodine says, I agree. Damian Lewis would have made the Pro Bowl last year, but I think they kept moving him around the offensive line because people on that line getting hurt. I think they even forced him at center. Yeah, he got put into center on one game. That's true. I think that was the only game that he got moved around. Maybe here and there a little more center in mixed moments of football games, but he was pretty much stringently over there on the right guard role throughout the whole course of the year. I would be a little happier, honestly, Bodine, if I was knowing that they were keeping him there. I have a belief that maybe his best position is right guard and not left guard, and that we might get a little bit of a lesser version of Damian Lewis over the left guard, having to block those prime time 3 techniques, versus when he's over on the right side blocking those 1 techs. So I'm a little worried there, but I do think he was an outstanding player last year. And we finally have a good, young, up-and-coming offensive lineman, which is just great to see. Joe Lopez, how you doing, Joe? Yo, my man. How's it going? This is Big Joe here from Guadalajara, Mexico, if I can say it right, Joe. Well, thank you for tuning on in from Mexico. Love it. We got a worldwide audience here at the Hawks Nest. That's it always tickles me to hear that. So love it. Leland, I just joined the chat. I just joined the chat. I'll be catching the first hour later while I'm working. I've been looking forward to your pod all week. Oh, thank you so much, Leland. You're very kind. Appreciate your membership here on the channel. I had to get back in and talk to you guys. It's been too long. Truth is I know it. Fire. How you doing, Truth? YGK, let's go, Bucks. Let's go, Bucks. Joe says, I'm the biggest Seahawks fan. I love it, Joe. You got some competition in here. We got some big time Hawk fans in here. David Kolshnikov. Hello from Israel. Go Hawks. Go Hawks, David. Hope you're doing good out there in Israel. I appreciate you. Hey, we got everyone watching from around the globe here. Love it. I love it, man. Like I said, it tickles me. To have a worldwide audience here with the Hawks Nest, not just being our little corner of the Pacific Northwest, because you folks out there worldwide, we get forgotten about up here in the Pacific Northwest. Many nationwide consider us Southern Alaska for whatever reason, but it's good to have you tuning in. Love it. Love my Hawks fans worldwide. Truth as I know it, I came late, but I made it. Hey, better late than never. Truth as I know it. Anytime you can catch it, I appreciate it. Joe says, kind of offset the cornerback deficiency. I feel our cornerback situation will be better this year than last year. Joe, it absolutely is right out the gate. Knowing that we basically had Quentin Dunbar, I think he was probably dealing with that knee injury pretty much throughout the whole season. Trey Flowers kind of gives you what he gives you last year. You don't get DJ Reed till about halfway into the season. You've got Shaquille Griffin out there who, despite what some fans out there think, really didn't play all that very good for you at the corner position. Another one of those guys that gives you those flashes. We talked a little bit earlier on this show about the mentality in football. It's almost more than baseball and basketball. Football creates a mentality if you see a play or a collection of a couple plays and it sits in your mind as the reality of a game, the reality of a performance of a player during the course of the game, when there are sometimes 45, 50 other plays for that given player to make a full determination on. I think that's the case there with the cornerback room a little bit. When you look at last season specifically, but this year you are doing better. You're doing a little bit better this year. Achille Witherspoon, good fit. You know what you get in DJ Reed. Trey Flowers has moved to a backup role, which he should be relatively solid in. You're not stacked deep. You got Demarius Randall, Pierre Desir. Those guys got a little bit of history here as well. But you feel relatively good about where you're at. I mean, you are, like, to your point, you are a little bit better where you were. But this is where I also open the door to being open to Stephon Gilmore or Richard Sherman, because you could be just a little bit better too. A little bit better, round out the depth a little bit more. The thing I've always said with this, Joe, is that remembering in that 2013 season, you actually pushed what a guy who probably will eventually be a Hall of Famer in Antoine Winfield, who was slotted to come in to be your slot cornerback because your corner room was so deep. You were 6-7 man strong. He couldn't make the roster. I'd like to see them do something similar at corner again, especially just, that tends to be a position that gets beat up a little bit. Truth as I know it, says Adams is a cancer. He's going to implode. Tick-tock. He's on the clock. Remember I said this. Truth as I know it, I'll note it. I might not agree with it, but I will note it. It's noted, and we'll see if you are proven to be the case. And look, he forced his way out of town in one place, and we'll know a lot. We'll learn a lot by how this contract negotiation goes into camp. Is he going to hold out? Does he end up signing? Does he keep holding to the mark of trying to get paid like a primetime pass rusher? It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Joe says, this is what I feel. Sooner or later, Pete will leave, and if Shane does, well, I feel Shane will become our next head coach. It's possible. It certainly has happened throughout NFL history before, where a longtime coach leaves and then an assistant does take over to become the head coach. I think that there's a lot of question marks here, Joe, in this respect. Shane Waldron's never called a play in the NFL in his life. Never called one play in one game ever. This will be his first time doing it in this very first game. And while I have a lot of faith in him updating this offense, and we're hearing a lot of great anecdotal tales from Sean McVay and some of the Rams fan base about some of the impact that Waldron's had on that team over the course of the last couple of years, there is certainly still a little bit of a question mark about what he will be when the rubber meets the road, and what he will be when the rubber meets the road with a guy like Coach Carroll, who tends to like to be so active on the offensive side of the ball and not just kind of butt out of things, how that whole dynamic plays out as well. It is a little bit of a question mark there, though I'm very hopeful, and I really feel like you almost should see a return on this investment immediately simply by just taking your offense 30 years into the future. And when people have talked about maybe that the offense coming out a little slow and taking a little bit of time to get going, and part of what I would counter with that a little bit is that the offense actually probably should be able to hit the ground running a little faster, because it's such a diametric change from what you've been, and that you're going to surprise so many teams and they have no tape to go off of. You're not just tweaking your offense a little bit or going from one modern offense to another. You're going from the 1980s offense to the 2020s offense. And that should have a great effect right from the beginning of things. But we'll see, Joe. The other aspect I'll say to this, I think that the team's going to be sold within the next couple of years. And I think that whatever new owner comes in is going to want to probably put, once Coach Carroll moves on, his own coach, put his own stamp on the team with his own hire. That tends to be an owner type thing. If you have an active owner especially, I think that probably is the other thing that we have to consider about the next head coach and who it could potentially be. But Joe, I did hear it there first. You just like Truth as I know it. If Adams is a cancer, I'll note it. And if Shane Waldron becomes our next head coach, you will get a shout out, and I will promise you I will remember it. Truth as I know it, Shane hasn't called one play, and now he's head coach material. All right, so yeah, covered that one. Covered it. Leland, you're awesome with your dono. Joe, do you think the Seahawks will ever come to play in Mexico? Yeah, I could see it. We definitely are getting some Mexico City games out there in the past. It seems like, unlike London, the NFL hasn't committed as much to getting into Mexico City as often. I feel like it's almost like you guys need to just get a team so you can get a legit stadium that's not a soccer stadium they're converting, but it's actually a football stadium at that point. And unlike with the NFL and its infatuation with London, it's you can make the trip to Mexico and it's not as big a flight as you're talking about having to go across the Atlantic Ocean to get over to London. It seems like it makes a lot of sense to me that you guys would get a team sooner than later down there, though there's not a lot of momentum yet around getting a team down there. But hard to say on that. Hard to say there's been the thing with it, Joe, is you got the UK whatever Twitter, NFL UK Twitter has been posting out Seahawk highlights all week saying, come back, Seattle, come back. So I think that they're trying to position themselves to getting back Seattle there. I think we're a big hit over there. I know we got a lot of fans in London. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on that one. I'm okay with it as long as they don't take away a home game from us. That's my one. That's my one. If we're going to go to Mexico City, it's got to be a road game. Randall, I think Flowers has more to give. I feel like they handed Dunbar the job last year and it messed with him. And he was coming off a poor playoff performance against the Packers where it really got into his head and fans beat him up about it through a whole offseason. Imagine playing your poorest game in the final game of the year and the fans are just endlessly calling you trash for 4 or 5 months leading into the next year. Even if you're a strong-willed person, strong-minded, you're probably going to have that affect you a little bit. I think it did a little bit to him. But with that said, he had a couple of games where he stood out last year. In the Buffalo Bills game, he played solid. And in the Cardinal game against Hopkins, he absolutely shut Hopkins down. Now, he had a little bit of help over the top, but he played really good in those games. I still like Flowers a lot. He's got all the prototypical size and speed they look for in the position. He's a guy that's had to change over from safety coming out of college to cornerback. It's going to take you some time to develop to get into that. But I still like him for depth, and I like him as a guy. If they're going to have competition, let him push in competition. See what he can do. Jake Mason, thoughts on signing Adrian Peterson or Le'Veon Bell for more depth at running back? To me, Le'Veon Bell seems done. I think Le'Veon Bell doesn't have much more to give. I think he's taking a year off from football is not a smart idea. I've seen NFL players do it in the past, and it's kind of few and far between that can kind of come back the next year and really do much. Adrian Peterson, I think, is probably done at this point. I just don't think, he's just a little bit too old for me at this point to really go in. I probably want to look at somebody else a little bit better in a trade. If I'm upgrading the running back position to this point, I'm looking to find a guy that's really, I'm not necessarily needing one of the top 7 or 8 guys in the league, but I might be looking for a guy that's in the teens as far as his talent in the NFL goes with the running back position. If I'm looking to make a trade or a move there, I'm looking to really do it with a substantial guy. And the aging running back guy, we've done it a couple times here and there, and it just, I don't know. If we're going that route, I almost just say call up Marshawn Lynch at that point, D-Mac! We're going to go get it later, D-Mac. Truth is, I know it. Tom Cable has our tailbacks and offensive line going east and west trying to create cutback lanes, and our players couldn't figure out his unique philosophy. I think that Cable's got a philosophy that just doesn't, I don't know if it works in the modern age as much. I really don't. And yeah, there's a little bit of that going on. There's also a little bit with Tom Cable of, we're not really going to teach pass blocking sets as much. We're just going to kind of be relying on tricking the defense into thinking it's more often than not in a running play, and then surprise, it's a pass play, and you're not ready to pass rush, and that's how we essentially get a win on the offensive line in pass protection. That part bothered me quite a bit. I think he was really kneecapped, no pun intended. He was really kneecapped by the way the NFL came down on the chop blocks and has removed that from the offensive line. Whereas when you look at 2011, when Cable came in, chop blocks were still very much a part of run blocking and a big part of run blocking, just getting the defender to the ground. And that they've really removed it on the backside. A couple other little just tweaks the NFL made that it seemed like really hit Cable's methodology of the way he wanted linemen to operate as well. I think especially, but yeah, I'm not a big Cable guy, man. And yeah, he must have done something in that offensive line room over this past season, because Trent Brown, still a very good player, wanted out of there. Rodney Hudson, who's been an outstanding center, forced his way out of town out of there. And Gabe Jackson, of course, forced his way to a trade with the Seahawks because he got tired of the Cable train too. So we'll see. Not to mention they went out and took Leatherwood in the first round this year, which was probably the biggest reach in the entire first round. And an exact type of player that's just the epitome of the problematic issue with what Cable looks at in offensive linemen. It's like what drew him and the Raiders to draft Leatherwood is exactly what drew Cable and the Seahawks to draft James Carpenter and then draft Jermaine Ifedi. It's the big body type. It's the type that looks good in the jersey type, but is actually being a refined player with good technique. Not so much. Bodine, bro, I pray this season works out great for us because if we're not, we're going to lose Russell Wilson and Hawks Nest. Two big L's. I'm riding with you guys to the end, so I ain't going nowhere even if things go bad. It's just going to bum me out, and then I got to bitch and moan, and you guys will get tired of me, running the team through the mud. But, the reason I do this channel and what I do is to try to speak as close to the truth as I can get and not BS you guys. And when if we're great and if we're good, I'm going to be pounding my chest and pounding the table and exuberantly explaining how this is amazing and cherish every bit of this. And if this team F's this up, it has full control to not F this up, which they're in the position to do so as we stand right now, July 18th, 2021. Then that's a different story, isn't it? Randall, I feel like the way we attack the offseason, that the front office understands the urgency. I think that they do too. That they are sitting on the cap space is not in itself a deterrent to me believing that they are on the path, that they're on that appropriate road to getting us into that right position or doing as much as they can control is what essentially I'm talking about. Because like we talked about, maybe there's not a reason to spend that money right now. There's not that player that you feel confidently in who's really going to upgrade it right now as we stand, or the price is too high to go, let's say, to the Patriots for Gilmore. They still want a first round pick maybe. They're trying to hardline the situation. Which would be a total Belichick type thing to do. So it's understandable if this has got to wait a little bit down the road. All the way to the trade deadline, I will remain a patient Paul and sit here and just breathe and do the yoga-like exercises to just remain in a patient state. But if they pass that trade deadline and they're sitting on that cap space and they've done very little or made some small little mini move for some dude who doesn't do much to help the team, well, then they get both barrels at that point. Click, click. You know what I mean? Joe, Brandon, thank you for the Seahawks content. My pleasure, Joe. Thank you for watching. You watch, I'll broadcast. Truth is, I know it. Flowers looked like an average starter last year. He's getting better. I'm glad we're agreeing on this. I saw improvement of him. We often look at players coming into a team in the first year or two and we say, okay, that is what that player is. He isn't going to get past that point. It is what it is. Just he's no good or he's great. Or guys do develop. Guys do come along and guys develop at different speeds. Not always is it the same trajectory. Sometimes it's a flatline trajectory that suddenly that third, fourth, fifth year jumps. And you might make the prediction for something like that to happen if you have a player who was coming out of college playing one position, played that position throughout his college career, and now you're having him play a whole new position. You might give that guy just a little bit more rope, a little bit more patience to see if maybe he can kind of tap into it, especially when he's shown flashes. So the guy who's intercepted 3 passes in a season, and it's not been 3 cheap picks, but actually jumping routes, showing good intuition. And that's what this guy's got. So I still have some hope for Flowers this year. I think he can be, like you said, league average, maybe even a smidge above at his top end if he can really tap into that. Don't see a star there. But I also don't think that you need as much in this scheme as star at the cornerback position. Seahawks Network, I think Andy Dickerson, the run game coordinator, is an underrated pickup for us. There's nothing wrong with pounding the rock. It just has to be innovative. I think Dickerson brings that. I agree. It'll be an attention to detail too. I think a little bit. It'll be a little bit, and especially in the respect of you're bringing out a play in and play out. And you're doing it oftentimes from the same formation, offensively speaking. You're not trying to be various in your formations. We're going to show you the same thing time and time again, and we're going to run all these different things out of it. But the key within that will be then the details of how you teach it to cover it up and to hide it and to maximize it, as well as he's going to come in and teach the reach block stuff. We didn't do a lot of reach blocks previously where you're asking your offensive lineman to really go across that line of scrimmage laterally to get to a guy rather than just getting the guy right in front of him and blocking him. I think those are things that you've got to, that's a new type of way of teaching it. Now you're asking him to do it. And I think that requires a certain, okay, you want to do this exactly this way, and we want to snap the ball this way. And everything in this offense now is going to be very detail driven. Whereas before it was so much more big picture driven, go get the big play. Russell, go make some magic, just some broad strokes. This is going to be a lot more exact and pinpoint. And that's a lot of reason why, again, I think out the gate it can give you some real quick early returns that you don't quite have to wait on, that you might normally have to wait on when you have a new offensive coordinator coming in. Brano, I love Russ, my all-time favorite player. I just hope he stays focused. It's the offseason, and he has every right to enjoy his wife. It's just cringy. it's, it's yeah, it's the Italy trip is, yeah, the photo shoots, yeah, it's Russ is, oh Lordy. I agree, man. They do what they do, but I think he's working hard this offseason. I think we're gonna see the best Russ we've seen in a few years this year. Joe Lopez says, like Johnny Lee Hooker says, things gonna change. Things are gonna change indeed. LeBron James, I've decided this summer I'm going to be taking my talents to the NFL. I'd love to have seen LeBron in the NFL. That would have been awesome. He would have been a hell of a tight end. Randall, I sure hope Penny is healthy. The news drop of cleanup surgery scared me. I know it's common, but it's a make or break year. Doesn't worry me as much. It's kind of expected to get those surgeries happening. I don't think that they always get reported, Randall. You have scar tissue that builds up into the knee on a post ACL surgery. So you're just going in there and cleaning up the scar tissue, not actually attacking ligament, or not ligaments, but or not the ligament, but the whatever that part is. I can't think of the medical name for it, but you're just getting the scar tissue moved out so you can get the little bit of the mobility, getting any like lingering soreness removed out of there so that you can train, right on it. But look, it's a make or break year. If he doesn't make it, that's it this season. I do think as well, Randall, there'll be some running backs that you can potentially trade for if you had to, if it just completely fell off with him and then Chris Carson sustained a major injury, as we know can happen with Chris Carson. So while I'm hopeful with him, I don't think they've hitched their wagons, the running back position being what it is. I think that they're okay if it doesn't work out. I'm hopeful it will. He's a perfect fit for Waldron's scheme and his ability to attack the outside zone runs. So that alone to me, as above all else, should make me hopeful for him. But we'll see how it lies. We'll see where he goes. Bodine, what's the name of the podcast you're joining tomorrow? I need to subscribe for a day to the 49ers fan to get notifications so I can see you dismantle those Niners sexuals tomorrow. They're the worst fan base. It's Last Second Sports on YouTube. So Last Second Sports will be the Niner channel I'm going to be on tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. LeBron James would be a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky. That's facts. Mitchell Trubisky is probably my least favorite quarterback in the entire NFL, watching him play the game. He plays the position, and he makes it look hard. You get those players that make things look easy, he makes it look hard. You want to come and get some of those? Yeah? Do you want to say hi to the stream? Okay. Come on up and say hi. Just make sure you bury your talons into my thighs when you do it, because that's going to kitty. Joe, I believe if Russ wins more Super Bowls, he will be like Brady, where... Cat decided to jump up. I believe if Russ wins some more Super Bowls, he will be like Brady, where he'll take a pay cut to have more money for more talent. I sure hope, Joe, that he learns that before winning the Super Bowl, because it's harder. It's going to be harder for him to win the Super Bowl if he doesn't take a pay cut. And we've covered this really hard on this channel here, Joe, so I won't go too hard onto it. But if you're a quarterback taking every last dollar bill, if you're an Aaron Rodgers, if you're a Russell Wilson, if you're a Drew Brees, you're going to make it harder for your team to roster build around you to get you then back to a Super Bowl. And that's just the stats pile up on this for the last 20 years. Last year, the two quarterbacks who made the Super Bowl were also the only two quarterbacks in the NFL who took less money than they could have made, and they could have actually been paid. They could have pushed more for more extra dollars, and they didn't. That helped them build out better rosters to help them get to the Super Bowl. It's a lesson that I think Russell could learn, but just hasn't yet. He hasn't embraced that as of yet. I'm not asking somebody to take less money, but man, when you've already made a couple contracts worth of the dough, and it is a pathway you can tangibly see to improving your team by bringing on extra assets. If Russ took $10 million less this year, that's two upper level players in this league you're adding to your team. That's the equivalent of doing what you did in 2012, where you were able to go out there and get both Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett in free agency at that point. It's like stacking two of those type of guys to take that discount. I think that's significant. 3-1-2 says Stafford is clutch. Well, not in this game. We got him 48-24. So if Madden's right, he's not. Thomas E. had my fantasy football draft today. Got Russ and DK. That's going to be a lethal for you, Thomas. That's going to be lethal for you. That's just points in the bank every week, man. Every week. Go Hawks 2021. Who's playing in Mexico this year? Not sure if they're playing there in 2021. COVID concerns. I don't think you'll see them there. And they don't even, before the whole pandemic, you weren't even seeing them consistently playing there in Mexico anyway. There were also problems with the field when they would play over there. But why you wouldn't have at least some preseason games and stuff? That'd be cool to see if they did that at the very least. But Mexico should get, if Mexico got a football team, they'd support them. They would. I know it's not a big football culture thing there, or it's, soccer basically there, but I think they would love it. They'd get right on board. I feel the same way about London, just London's flight's too far. Go Hawks, division predictions, NFC West, Seahawks, Vikings, and Washington, Tampa Bay. I agree with the Go Hawks. I only got the Vikings if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play in Green Bay. But if he's playing in Green Bay, I think that they still pull that division out next year. Though the Vikings they're getting Daniil Hunter back. He didn't play at all last year. They got that running game. They've committed to the offensive line, which I think if you're going to be a running team and committing to the offensive line the way the Vikings have, it's commendable. And I like what they're doing there. Oh, you tell them. You tell them. You tell them all. Okay. Yeah. She's very talkative tonight. Truth is, I know it. Trubisky was drafted before Lamar Jackson. Don't tell me white privilege doesn't exist. It's like the Bears never watched Lamar play. I don't know if it's white. I don't know if it's that. I'm not a big guy signing off on that type of stuff. To me, it's more of the Chicago Bears have been inept at taking quarterbacks for 40 years. Sid Luckman was the last quarterback that they had that was decent. And, whether that's because they've been predisposed to drafting a quarterback with a certain skin color or not, I'm not sure. But prior to making this selection of him, they've been crap at it. So I would lean more to just they don't really understand what they're doing at the quarterback position. Even the Fields thing this year basically landed in their lap. But again, to my point on this is if this is a team that has a predilection to avoiding quarterbacks because of their skin color, you would think that they probably wouldn't have taken Fields this year. But that's kind of where I just lean on it. But I don't understand the Trubisky pick when it happened was a head scratcher. His tape was not that good. There wasn't a lot that he showed out. He only gave you 1 year of that type of production. You had other quarterbacks who had shown you so much more on their tape. The one thing with Lamar, I'd say I hold them more accountable, I think, more on the Josh Allen. I think that was the Josh Allen year and then the Deshaun Watson year as well. I hold them more to account on that. I understand a little bit more of the Lamar Jackson. Because in making Lamar Jackson, you were doing it from the standpoint of accepting that you were going to run this offense like you see the Ravens run. The Ravens weren't running the offense they're running right now prior to Lamar Jackson getting there. They changed their whole offense and structured it all around him and his running ability. And you were going to have to embrace that by taking Lamar, and that's very hard for a lot of teams in the NFL to do. It's not always... It's a sort of an easier said than done. It sort of speaks to a little bit, I think, of how good a offensive coordinator Mark Roman is for the Ravens and the job he's done there. But that's the one thing that I can understand a little bit why people pass Lamar. You're still seeing Lamar as he's going through right now, struggling and throwing the football and pushing it down the football field and being accurate in doing so. And that still hasn't gotten fixed as he's gone along over the course of his year. But Deshaun Watson... Josh Allen, you passed on that for that part of it's just absolutely silliness. Go Hawks says our fantasy draft is early September only because of injuries, and we have it 10 days or so before the season starts. That's the best time to do it because you can build injury. Nothing worse than drafting a guy, in late July who gets injured in early August at the start of training camp, and you're just sitting on a crap team for the rest of the year and trying to make it work with waiver wire stuff. Joe says, Brandon, talk to Pete. Make his old ass come to Mexico just once. I could try, man, but I think he'd say we'd have to call it. He'd say it's up to the league office. It's out of my hands. It's up to the league office. Go Hawks. Division predictions. You got the Chargers, the Ravens, and the Bills and the Colts. I'm pretty again agrees with you. Just one team. More difference on that. Go Hawks. One team. I think the Ravens aren't going to be quite as good as they've been. I think the Browns continue to take a step forward. Seahawks North said I drafted Russ in fantasy last year and paid the price. Won me a few games, but lost me a couple also. Started the season 6-1, but finished like 7-5. Yeah, he got you the money early, but you need it late in fantasy. So you need the guy hot late, not early. That's a death stroke on that. Thomas E. Yeah, I kind of wanted to take Rodgers, but I was uncertain of the situation. Yeah, I'd hold off on drafting him too, man. It's a bit, though you can't. Well, then you got the whole he could retire. That's the other thing with him. Like, you draft him and then he ends up retiring. That'd be brutal. Joe says, I think Russ tanked on purpose the second half of last year. Maybe. It's hard to say, Joe. He could have been playing with an injury. It could have been the offense didn't make the adjustments it needed to make because Schottenheimer wasn't capable of making the adjustments. That stuff had been following Schottenheimer back to his career going back to the Jets, and that he wasn't known as a guy who was a great adjuster out there who can, they're doing this, I'm going to fix it, guy going to this route of it. He was a guy with a good plan A, but not much of a plan B, C, D, or an E. So it's hard to say which of those exactly it was. Hard to see also a guy like Russ, who is as competitive as he is, going in and dialing it back and not trying to push to the ends of the earth to make it happen. It's hard for me to see with him, but you may be right. Maybe. Marty, MF Williams, I won my season with Russ, Derrick Henry, DK, and Tyreek. That's cheating, Marty. That is cheating there. Truth is, I know. Oh, here's 3-1-2. Sorry. Seahawks Network, the Rams got worse overall and made one trade, in my opinion, an overrated quarterback. I think the Lions had a better team in 2014 than the Rams do this year. Yeah, it's been one of those long narratives out there, hasn't it? Especially nationally speaking with the Rams. They're pretty universally loved nationally and looked at as this team that is going to win the division next year. It seems like most have us taking a step back for whatever reason. And kind of hard to say why off of just one player. But I've never seen one player and his profile and his reputation turn so uniformly in an offseason as you see with Matt Stafford this offseason. Him going simply from a Detroit Lions to a Rams has turned him from a little bit better than a league average quarterback throughout his career to this deity-like status now that he's with the Rams. I don't quite understand it. I don't know that one little addition makes it that way. I've heard all the hyperbole coming out of the Rams camp about this guy being the second coming. We'll see. We'll see. He's been in this league a long time with very little success as it pertains to the win column. Maybe that's all on Detroit. Maybe that's all on Michigan. I think maybe he's got a little bit of a hand in it too. Randall says, Browns 2 top 5 running backs. Don't be surprised if Buffalo falls back too. Yeah, I see Buffalo falling back. I think the division gets a little tougher. New England comes back and they're a little more stronger. The Jets really, if I'm a Jets fan, I feel great about what they've done this offseason. If Wilson hits the ground running there, they're a dangerous team. There's nobody in that division that just, I was trying to think, who's the other team in that division? Jets, Patriots. Who am I forgetting on that one? Forgetting somebody off the top of my head. But I look at them and I think they're going to have a little bit of a harder time with just getting it done because of that. I think they're going to be up against it. And last year, I think the division was a little weaker for them to kind of work through. As well as, I don't know, they haven't killed it exactly this offseason either, Buffalo. They've been all right, but there's not been some move they made that you feel great about. Miami. And Miami's up and coming as well. You got to feel pretty good about the moves they've made. I think that they're still a year out or whatever, but it's a competitive division. And Randall says, Browns have 2 top 5 running backs. Don't be surprised. Yeah, and I like the Browns because of those 2 top, and a good offensive line around it, right, Randall? You got Treader in there, Joe Bitonio. They drafted a kid last year out of Alabama. They've stacked up that offensive line really nicely in order to be able to continue to run on anybody. And that's what I think you've got to do if you're a running team, is you've got to stack a talented offensive line so that there's not those weeks where you can't run the ball and then have to change yourself from an identity standpoint as an adjustment. Rather than that, stack them up front and you'll go down everybody. Everybody will have an issue with you. Seahawks Network, Brandon, that's my prediction also. Cleveland to the Super Bowl. A dominant running game and defense travels. A dominant passing game doesn't. Look at both the Chiefs Super Bowls. Yeah, I feel like the Chiefs are just going to run a little bit out of gas this year. I think they'll still be dominant early on. Andy Reid's teams come out the gate always 8-0, 9-1. I think they start to trail off as the year goes on, and a little bit of the injury situation piles up as you have a lot of guys who played a lot of extra games over the last couple of seasons for that team. So I think that they start to dial back, and I think Cleveland's starting to hit things just at that right moment. They made a great coaching hire last year. He's a guy with an offensive game plan of attacking with the 2 tight end formation, as well as anybody probably since Belichick was doing it with Gronk and Hernandez 10 years ago nearly. So you look up and down that roster, man, they've got good depth. They've got good frontline talent. They're not thin. They probably still have some moves they can make, being that they have still Baker on that last year of his rookie deal, I believe. So they've got still some flexibility going forward. I'm very high on the Browns as we go into this. The Browns and the Chargers are two of the teams in the AFC that I'm as high as far as them moving it in the right direction here. And Thomas E., I like Stafford too. I just have my deal with it is that he's gone from a guy that I thought was a little underrated to the pendulum has swung now to me. He's a little overrated. When you're telling me that he's going to be the hero of your offseason and you can lose 6-7 starters on a team that was a sub-playoff team, and he offsets all those losses, and not only offsets all those losses, but then allows you to also take a further step forward beyond those losses. That's a pretty wide breach to ask me to walk, and one that I'm just not buying. Especially as he gains another year of age, and especially as he's getting older, and especially as injuries have started to pile up on him last year. Through and says hot take. Kamara goes for over 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving. Saints are going to be more run heavy, and Kamara will basically be their wide receiver too. Basically that, 3-1-2. I mean, past Michael Thomas, they don't have a lot at the wide receiver position. They lost Emmanuel Sanders after this year. It wasn't great for them, but he gave him a reasonable number 2. I agree. I think they're just going to lean on him. They paid him a whole lot of money. Sean Payton's like, I'm going to get every last dollar bill for this cash because we paid him a god-awful sum. So, yeah, I think he's going to be really leaned on. If I was going fantasy, I'd lean over to Kamara and picking him because he's going to get his touches. No doubt about it. Thomas says, on break for work. What's up? What's up, Thomas? Good to see you, man. Your thoughts on what is most likely the trade that Seattle will do before the season? Hard to see a trade happen before the start of the season, but if I say the most likely one to happen, I would say it's the Stephon Gilmore deal because he does look to be at an impasse with the Patriots right now. He's not going to come back and play on that last $7 million deal with the Patriots. I don't think if you signed him to a 2 or 3 year deal to bring him in here, that's going to be a huge cost at that point to do that. It'd be a low end corner deal at that point. You're not pennies, but you're not paying top end market prices like a Shaquille Griffin type prices on that 2 or 3 year deal. But Gilmore would be the guy I would say is the most likely guy, Thomas, above anybody. I'd say he's the one that stands out to me. Him or Zach Ertz, because those have been the two with the most proverbial smoke behind them as far as our Seahawks front office is concerned. Truth is, I know it. How can you be a top 10 quarterback and a perennial loser at the same time? Make that make sense. I don't know. I can't make that make sense. Truth is, I know it. And I don't know if I've ever had him necessarily in my top 10. I got to go through the names. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks in this sport right now. I think he's always been a teens guy. Always been he's always in the upper level of top 15 to me, but you're always picked, he's at 11 to 15. He's usually maybe in his top year, he was at 10 or 9 in his best season. But to think that he's suddenly top 10 moving to Rams, nah. Seahawks Network, I don't trust our depth at all. If we avoid injuries for the most part, I think we go pretty far, but depth at wide receiver, offensive line, and corner aren't deep enough. Fire Ivan the Terrible. Yeah, we'll see what Ivan does this year. He's getting a full offseason Seahawks Network to work back with our guys again. Everything's open. Facilities are open. He's going to have the training camp, all that stuff. A lot of opportunity for him to get a lot of those abdominal injuries. And I'll tell you what, if we see a huge amount of those hernia injuries on our guys, like we've seen in the past, you'll know Ivan's been doing his dirty work. Joe Lopez says, Taylor's a gift. Have faith. I do, Joe. I feel good about it. But he is playing a new position at the Sam linebacker role that he's not played much of since going back to college, where he played it in just fits and it's just little bits. He was really more of the down lineman traditional stuff in college, but he did a little bit of it, and I think he'll be fine with it. I don't think it's my biggest worry. I'm more worried about Jordan Brooks over at the Will than I'm worried about Taylor at the Sam. Seahawks Network says, I'm actually the kind of opposite of you, Brandon. I'm a believer in the 49ers. I think we both finish 11-6, and the winner comes down to a tiebreaker. I think the Rams and Cardinals are absolute fool's gold. To me, it's a fluid situation, Seahawks Network. So I'm a little affixed with the Rams being just below us, but I easily could see it playing out that way too, the way you describe. I think when you have so many teams that have done what they've done over recent years to truly go for it and turn themselves into winners and make aggressive trades and make aggressive signings, that's going to lead to a wide variance of possibilities in how we see this play out. I could see the Niners coming together. It's the pathway. I'll be talking about this tomorrow night with Last Second Sports. The pathway to that for the Niners is going to be Trey Lance, and he is the key to that. And look, Trey Lance, as you guys know, was my number 2 quarterback in this draft, so I'm a big Trey Lance believer. But my questions come up as you getting the best of Trey Lance next year in his rookie year, having not even played a whole season of football last year. That's hard for me to see. With that said, the great year that he had in the previous year, he had 43 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he did it basically averaging 18 attempts a game. And if you look at the Niners, what have they done with Jimmy Garoppolo at times? Fit him into that very structured offense with only a certain amount of attempts a game, running the ball as much as humanly possible, protecting him. And then now you add a guy like Lance who can actually move around and be mobile. That could put them to that top end that you describe of an 11-6, even a 12-5 type season, Seahawks Network. So I could see it, but I just don't have a lot of faith in rookie quarterbacks. And teams that put their faith on a rookie quarterback, I think, tend to have their hearts broken. Thomas Cox says, one of the Niner corners said that Stafford's a loser. It doesn't matter if he's in Detroit or LA, he will lose. I think the player reaction shows he isn't as good as people think. Yeah, that was their safety said that. Their really good safety said that. I forget his name right now. But I was watching some tape on him the other night. But yeah, I saw that comment as well, Thomas. Some of the division's not as impressed just by the fact that he's moving over. Seahawks Network, I don't have faith that we take the next step. We've been waiting on for really 6 years now. I have to be a Debbie Downer, but I just am not that confident we take advantage of opportunities like the number 1 seed. It's a sober look at this, right? Seahawks Network, and there's again, I can understand looking at it from that standpoint. Some of the success I see this year is I think that the pathway to get there will not be as difficult as it's been recently. I don't think the NFC is going to be as strong. I think there's a good possibility that even the front runner type guys and the Packers and the Buccaneers could find themselves get hit with stuff that drops them back very quickly and allows you to suddenly take that front roll of things almost a little bit by default in the lack of really true suitors to do so in the NFC. But I know where you're coming from, so I don't knock it, and I can get why you would think that way as well. This is also why Seahawks Network, I bang so hard on this trying to make more moves, because you could do more to round this team out. Nas says, I've seen someone on TikTok say no one is from Seattle, yet there are Seahawks fans everywhere. They really don't think we exist. I never get the bandwagon thing. I never get anything else. It's part of why I created this, the original Great Seahawks moment I did in the game. The Seahawks won the game. The 12th man, won the game against the Giants. We caused 11 false start penalties. It's gone back to the Kingdom days. You literally had in the Kingdom days, the NFL have to create a rule where they were going to flag the crowd for being too loud because the players couldn't hear in the Kingdom. And that we had that happen, that we're the place that created the wave. And to think that we're a place that geographically speaking has Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Alaska, Hawaii, Washington. We got 6 states that claim us. Utah even, and some people in there. So to not understand why we have a wide breadth of fans is so stupid to me. It just shows what an idiot you are to kind of present that, or to call us bandwagon fans is, we had Kingdom sellouts in the 80s when the team wasn't good. And even through the parts of the 90s when the team wasn't good and the owner was trying to move him to LA actively. We always have supported this team. We've always stood by them. And for anybody else to say differently is absolute BS. There's plenty of teams in this NFL that have a lot of fan bases that are true bandwagon fans. We are not one of them. 312 says, Kyler's made of glass. I don't see him lasting very long in the league. I'm rooting for him because he's a midget. But I see his career ending short due to injury. He's just not big enough. There's something missing with Kyler with me, 312. I haven't been able to exactly put my finger on it. I don't know if it's leadership. I don't know if it's a little bit of an inaccuracy down the football field where he's got the strong arm, but he can't always put it where he wants to put it. Maybe a little bit of a lack of touch. There's something I can't quantify as to what bothers me with him just a little bit. The fact that he starts mentioning about wanting to go back to baseball this offseason, for instance, I could see him he's got that kind of mentality, it seems like, where you could just go, this ain't working out, I'm going back to baseball in a year. But I'm not sold on Kyler. No way. We're told he was the Russell Wilson 2.0, the upgrade, and I don't think he's been that. He's got elements of his game that are a little bit better Russell, but Russell is got so many other parts of his game that are so much better than Kyler, even where Kyler's at right now in his career. He's had more attempts to allow for him to have some nice, pretty stats over the first 2 years of his career. But when you watch him on the football field, you can definitely tell there is something missing at play here. And he's still a young guy. He might still come along too. 312 says Lance isn't ready yet. Jimmy won't last an entire season. They'll be held back by Lance Ford a bit. I see Lance as a Josh Allen 2.0. He's going to take a while to develop. That's where I stand with it, 312. And that's where I had Trevor Lawrence is my number one quarterback coming in this draft. And I know that everybody loved Wilson, but for me, the number two for me at that point was Trey Lance. For the reason that you said, I saw a Josh Allen 2.0 type. NFL arm, can make every pass that you need to see made, can operate within the structure of the offense if you don't want to give him a high volume of passing attempts. And then he has all of the mobility that you need to require of the modern quarterback in the modern age to expand plays, to run the read option stuff. I think that allows him to tap into some really good potential and do so very, very quickly. I just don't think it's going to happen the first year, and it probably will take 2 to 3 years, as your point is presented. Thomas Cox, it depends how good the offense is. If Waldron changes it to a crazy good Seahawks offensive system that leads to a Super Bowl, then yeah, that would be awesome. Thomas says, I'm from Seattle. I've been a fan since the 80s. You know, Thomas. You know what's up. ZXN GOAT, what free agent do you want us to get? ZXN GOAT, if we're going to talk about the free agents available right now, that is just available in front of us, only these possibilities that exist in this moment, I'll go to Geno Atkins. Purified 3 technique. He got moved to more of a 3-forward scheme over the last 2 years in Cincinnati. They've transitioned away from their former 4-3 scheme, which he was really not only ideally suited, he's a purified 3 technique in a 4-3 scheme. He is not a 3-4 defensive end, which is a little bit of what they were, I think, having him do a little bit with Cincinnati. So I go back to that and say, bring that guy in. I bet he's got a little bit of gas left in his tank. He'd add a player onto your roster that you don't really have right now. I certainly am kind of intrigued by what you could maybe get out of Robert Kondiche, who would be more of a bigger 3 technique type, more along the lines of a Hakeem Hicks type, as opposed to Geno Atkins, who was sort of like Aaron Donald before Aaron Donald, a little bit. Now, as everyone thinks that we finished third or last in the division, no one saw the offseason we just had. I can't wait to see the excuses people have when we sweep the cards and win the division. It'll be fun to watch the excitement, their surprise on their faces. Who saw this coming? We should have seen this coming. We didn't. We should have seen it coming. We didn't. But I think that they've got that all chambered and ready. I think that they know what's up, but it's just funner. They want to talk about LA teams and they want to talk about the big market teams. And I'm used to this now, going back through the years of being a Seahawks fan and seeing how you kind of get slighted at times in being mentioned nationally. And that's fine. I've always gravitated towards liking the fact that when you're more of an underdog, it's sort of a better place for us to operate. When we were that underdog Legion of Boom team coming up, the young kids, the young whippersnappers out there talking smack, you were a little more successful than once you got to the point of being established and everybody was coming for you. Tommy Eden says Flowers isn't the only reason we lost that game. Tommy, I agree with you 100%. And I'm not trying to knock him as being the guy who was the cause of that Packer loss. Frankly, I put a lot more on Lano Hill, who was supposed to have coverage over the top on the play that most people look at with Flowers in that game above all else, and he didn't provide the help. That to me was more of that deal. And I think people were unduly harsh on him, Tommy. I think they were. I think people had no patience for Trey. It was weird because a lot of people gave Shaquille Griffin a ton of room and let him off the hook on a lot of stuff where he didn't play great. But with Flowers, he was held to this almost a different level of critique. And I don't know why exactly. I don't know why Shaquille. I can only think that Shaquille, maybe people gave the pass to because he had his brother and it was a good story and all that. But, at the end of the day, Flowers has not played that far off of where Shaquille Griffin's played in the last couple of seasons. And in fact, there's times he's played better. 3-2, do you think Watson plays next season? And if not, what do you think happens with him? Hard to see the NFL letting one of their stars not play for a whole year, especially the quarterback position. I will tend to be one of those people that sort of go, if this was a guy that was a guard, If this was like a guard on a middling team or, a free safety on some team, that they'd come down with a hammer. But if it's a quarterback who's an MVP level type talent in his prime, I think they find a way to get him back onto the field at some point next year. I'll go with half a season suspension. I'll go with 8 to 10 games as a suspension, and they let him come back for the back six. Bodine, do we win this? Do we win the similar? Do we win in the simulation in the background against the Rams? Saw Brooks got a nice INT when you were saying Brooks isn't good in coverage. Yes, we did. We won it 48-24 was the win in this one. So we handled business on this one. We got the Rams. Basically, we got the Rams number, is what I'm saying. It's going to be domination. Sorry, Rams fan. AK says Watson can only go to do the Eagles. He can only go to the Eagles. Yeah, he can go to a couple teams. I think the Dolphins will come into play on him if he's available. I think there'll be a few teams that jump into the fray on that one. Even maybe a surprise team we're not thinking. Like a team like a Vikings team. If they flip the Texans, a guy like Kellen Mond, could they get Watson? And it might be intriguing. So I think there'll be a variety of teams that are vying for his services. Diehard Hawks fan. Hey, champ, what's the chances of Aldon Smith gets suspended, and in turn, how long until he plays? Diehard Hawks fan, I would tend to believe that you're going to get some suspension coming down the pike for Aldon Smith to some degree because he's a repeat offender. I don't think that this is a major issue. This isn't him, beating a woman up. This isn't him drunk driving and potentially killing somebody on the road. This seems very much that he was defending the honor of his sister against her reportedly abusive boyfriend. So I'm going to lean in the direction of thinking that though that does get him suspended for probably something like a 4 to 8 games, he will at least be available to you on the back half of the schedule at that point. I think that that's kind of your worst case scenario. I can't see them suspending him for a whole season for this. That seems unduly harsh, especially for a guy who played pretty good last year, has been out of the league for multiple years. So I'm going to say at least 8 games you're getting Aldon Smith next year. Appreciate you watching, Die Hard. And if you like what you're hearing, by the way, it's been a while since I did this, please do hit the like button for me if you could. It does help this channel out considerably. We are on the road to 5,000. You guys know at 5,000, you guys get the Magnum PI cosplay show. That's what I'm going to do, the holster and everything. You're getting the stash, the power of the luck stash before the year, man. I'm telling you. Seahawks Network, Tom Cable sucks. I can't believe this dude still has a job. The Alex Leather pick sums up the Oakland Raiders drafting the last 4 years. It does. It sums up Gruden there and the type of player they're looking for. It's an antiquated approach. We're going to look for the guys that look the most impressive coming off the bus, the guys that give us the most splash plays on film. But what does he do consistently play in and play out? That's what really does, at the end of the day, matter. Henry Ruggs might open up his sixth gear on the football field and show you speed that you don't see it everywhere. But he's a complete receiver around that. What does he give you playing and play out? He's just a gadget guy. I got to manufacture touches for. These are questions that the Raiders don't seem to be asking themselves at times in some of these players they picked recently. Diehard Hawks fans, who's your sleeper for number 4, number 5? I feel that Lockett, Metcalf, and Eskridge are the only locks. I agree with you there on that one. I do think that they're going to potentially bring Gordon back into the fray if he does get released Die Hard by the commissioner's office and they let him get to an active status. I think he would be your de facto 4 at that point if you bring him in. But seeing as that he's not on the roster and we got to work with what we've got right now, my 4 and 5 would be Freddie Swain and Cade Johnson. That'd be my 2. You would do it. Freddie will make the roster because he can play on the outside, and you don't have a lot of guys that can play on the outside. And Cade will make the roster, I think, because he's going to give them a lot of great snaps out of the slot, and he's going to give them a lot of excitement out of the slot because of that. And I think that's going to encourage the coaches to go into that direction. So those would be my 4 and 5 as we stand right now. Najee Swick says facts. Colin Farrell, that was the worst pick of the bunch. Top 5 pick on a defensive end that everyone said was a good locker room guy, a try-hard guy, not an uber-talented guy. What are you doing picking that in the top 5? And Arnett was a guy that I saw as a slot-only specialist type dude that they picked and then tried to move on to the outside and let him play out there, which just isn't going to work. And Ruggs and And they gave money now to Colton Miller. So yeah, Gruden's good. Gruden's got that 10-year contract, man. He's going to take all 10 years to get them into a state, and that division's getting tough. AFK, sorry. I have a feeling Eskridge is going to have his best game this year against the Rams. Could be. Thing with that is that they lost their slot cornerback this last year, AFK. You know, you don't have Hill out there anymore, so it's going to be tough for them. Another guy you might bring up in that slot, Jalen Johnson, another guy you lost, who might be another guy you used up in that slot at times. So they're going to get somebody untested out there, and it could get interesting. Seahawks Network, Tom Cable effect is real, and it's still lingering a bit in Seattle in terms of drafting. Yeah, a little bit still there. I mean, even the Damian Lewis pick that did work out would have been a Tom Cable type pick, you know. Oh, the guy's a road gator and he can blow anybody off the ball. Yeah, but Tommy, he's not really good in pass protection, but he's blowing people off the ball, right? Yeah, but he's a little suspect as far as his pass. If he's blowing people off the ball, bring him in. And I think it got that simple with Tom at times. Joe, Brandon, I don't want to sound inappropriate, but here's my email address. Hit me up later on next week if you have time. I appreciate it. All right, I'll hit you up, Joe. I'll try. I'm running around, man. I got a ton going on. But Tim Jobs, 49ers at Seahawks. Tim, you going to be on the stream tomorrow? I'm going to be on the Niners channel. Mark, hit that like button. Some podcasts are pushing for the Hawks to hire Cam as coach for safeties, and I'm for it, but what do you think? I think Cam's got to want to do it. I think that there's almost a little bit of potential 2-for-1 that you get a bit when you got guys like Cam Chancellor and Cliff Averill in the background, helping in the background in other ways. Certainly think Cam could be a great coach, be a great leader. People would listen and respond to him, no doubt about that. But does he really want to do it? You know, I mean, he's made a lot of money. Does he want to travel around with the team? And do you want to, those coaches have got to, they've got to essentially, Kitty, you can't go up and knock the thing off. Those coaches have got to invest a lot of time, and they've got to do a lot of stuff as far as extra hours go. Does he really want to put that much time into it, or can he have a little bit of an effect coming off the field? Ryan Neal, for instance, was in Cam Chancellor's ear throughout the early part of last year. Cam reached out to him and said, Ryan, you're being thrown into the fire here. I know this defense. Let me help you out with Jamal Adams' injury, with Marquise Blair's injury. You just brought him onto the team. I think having that guy in your back pocket for those moments is helpful from that aspect of things. But if he wants to do it, I'm on board, Mark. I'm on board. Tim Jobs says, I'm a Cowboys fan. We're going back to the Super Bowl next season. With that defense, Tim? With that defense? Yeah? You sure? With that defense? Go Hawks 2021. Medical term is meniscus. That's right, meniscus injury. I don't know if he was having but I don't think he's having his meniscus repaired. I thought it was like he's just having a cleanup of the cartilage, because the meniscus is actually like a thing in the knee there. Seahawks Network, I'm not sure hiring a former player is going to fix everything. I'd like to see it and try it out, but oh, Kitty. Please don't turn this off. Okay, come on out through here. She's getting feisty. Seahawks Network says Russ isn't taking a pay cut anytime soon. Certainly haven't seen any proof of it going down, have we? There's been no indications that that's what he is going to do. Hush, Kitty. I know you're going to try to do something. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Oh, she's being a pain. Okay. No, he has not taken a pay cut right now, and I don't think he's going to. I think he would have taken a pay cut at this point, Seahawks Network, if he was going to this season. So I think that situation is just going to remain what it is. LeBron James says Mitch Trubisky is the worst quarterback in NFL history, in my respective opinion. I could see why you'd think I could be talked into that, LeBron, especially when you consider where he's drafted. You know, when you get a guy who's crappy and he's a fifth rounder, and you go, okay, well, he's a fifth rounder, but when you're a top 5 pick to be that, I mean, hell, at least Jeff George gave you some juice from time to time. There's my obligatory Jeff George reference, by the way, on the stream. Seahawks Network. Oh, by the way, I made a new logo. I had to throw things back with Largent. That's awesome. I'll check it out, man. I can see it in a little bit in the small view there, but always a solid move going with the Largent, man. Always a solid move going with the Largent. Seahawks Network, Jay Cutler was way better than Trubisky. Yeah. He had a couple of 4,000-yard seasons. He had some years he put up with some good stats. Absolutely. Truth is, I know it. They probably took Fields because they learned their lesson with Jackson. I would think so, yeah. I think that they finally took a huge critique, beating, passing on the guys that they passed on. I think Deshaun Watson, as much as anything, is what they really get hit for. Because like I said, you can make a little excuse on the Jackson. You have got no excuses when it comes to Deshaun Watson and not going after him. But I think that they also sort of just got luck. They lucked into Fields. It's not like they jumped up for Field. They moved up in the draft, but it was at a no-brainer state where they're moving up from 20 to 12, and there was no way anybody saw him dropping that far in the draft to begin things, where they would have been absolutely not only lampooned, all of that front office probably would have been sent out on a rail if they hadn't have made that type of trade in that last draft. So they just sort of fell into that one as much as that they made the choice for him. Bodine says Bears are just stupid. They passed on Mahomes too. Laughing out loud, nothing but a race because Chicago's a pretty progressive city. Yeah, I just think that that's where I come back to thinking they're just not great at drafting quarterbacks. They don't understand the position. And there's been plenty of these franchises in the league that struggle with understanding how to draft a quarterback and looking at the right quarterback. I mean, frankly, our franchise in Seattle has kind of not understood over the course of a lot of different front offices and coaching staffs who've come through what to really look for and what to really go for at the quarterback position. And my examples of this would be that the Seattle Seahawks in the 80s alone, the Seattle Seahawks passed on Warren Moon to begin things. So you could have gotten for basically a 10th round pick or whatever. They had 15 rounds at that time. You could have gotten John Elway if you're just willing to kick in one more draft pick, as he was on the trade block at that time and was interested in coming to Seattle. And then you had the chance to go out there and get Brett Favre. And Chuck Knox pounded the table and said, "Get me Brett Favre. I like this kid out of Mississippi." And Ken Behring, the same guy that tried to move us to L.A., said, "No, I want us to go draft Mark McGuire's brother, the 6'10" quarterback who can't throw." Which, by the way, if we're talking about bad quarterbacks, McGuire, though he was taken, I think, 12th in the first round, might be a worse quarterback than Trubisky. That guy was so bad. Tim Job says, "Field sucks. Honest Bear fan, by the way." Tim, I thought you were a Cowboys fan. The King, Fields will be bad this year and be good next year. Agreed, King. I see Fields taking a little bit like Trey Lance, just taking a little bit of time to develop. He'll show you some flashes, but getting the most out of him is going to take a year or two, and that's not a surprise or a horrible thing. Truth is, I know it. Fields is only the second black quarterback the Bears have ever drafted, but that wasn't my point. My point is that Mitch Skin made him overvalued. If he was black, there would be no way they drafted him. I guess my only thing with this is that you may be right on that, truth as I know it, but when we got to deal with what we're trying to read as the lay of the land, and we're going to ascribe something to a team as being they're making decisions based on skin color, that's a pretty big thing to throw at a team, right? That's a large charge, and if you're going to bring a big charge to an NFL team like that and present that, then it should probably have some evidence to back it up. Be it an email or correspondence or an interview where they're catching somebody talking off the cuff to give us that kind of indication. Simply making it because they've never drafted but one black quarterback prior, I don't know if that's necessarily in itself a good enough measure for me to be convinced that that's what's going on. There's a lot of teams out there that I think we could probably go through a few NFL teams that probably haven't had a lot of black quarterbacks that they've drafted. Or if they've drafted them, they've only drafted a couple. We could probably find a few of them. And maybe the truth is that there's just an ownership that's scared of black quarterbacks. That could be the truth. But again, it's a large charge you're levying. You're levying that large charge. I got to see the proof to back it. Rodney Preshno, how you doing, Rodney? Brandon, did you realize that all the teams that were listed that Russ said he would be okay with to go to had no offensive line either? This was really about power and control, not protection. I think power and control certainly was a factor on this. I think there was a lot that went into the situation beyond that. I would believe it was all about power, control, and not protection if I thought the situation had been resolved and it was in a state of now where everything had been cleared up, but I don't think it's in that state. And while those other teams had no offensive line either, to a degree. I mean, the Cowboys didn't have, I mean, that's not the worst offensive line over there. The Bears' offensive line's not great, but it's not god-awful. I think more of what he was pushing for in those teams was less about their offensive line and more about having a coach that was an offensive-minded coach who would build an offense around him and his skill set. And I think some of the teams picked also were factored in by where his wife wanted to potentially go. I think that was probably part of it as well. So I don't know if there was just one simple reason on it as to why things kind of went the way they did. I think there was a multitude of things that factored in a bit. No, we're not doing a long stream, so we'll be doing a wrap up here pretty soon. So I'm getting through. I need to save my voice for tomorrow, so I'm sure we're going to go a couple hours tomorrow. Random again, so Stafford's closer to Carr than he is to Rodgers. Yes, sir, that is true. I'd say that. Tim Jobs, why do you hate me? I'm an honest Seahawks fan. I don't hate you, Tim Jobs. Oh, Luke Sims. Luke's telling you to head. Sometimes we get some folks out here just... Seahawks Network, Matt Stafford went from stat Padford on to the second coming of Jesus to media. If the Seahawks could get this much hype after one move. Hashtag keep sleeping. For sure, man. Thomas E. Dolphins are the other team. Yeah. I think you mean about Watson. That'd be the other one. Najee Woostwork says Stafford has a lot of game-winning drives. I think that's why the Rams traded for him. He does. He's actually got more game-winning drives in his career than Russell does. He's also been playing more years than Russell has in the league, and he's been behind in a lot more games than Russell Wilson's has over the course of that time. So he had a lot of opportunities to do the coming back. But he does have that stat, no doubt about it. Bodine, Belichick wants Russell Wilson. That's his set dream at quarterback. Even got a bootleg version of Russ on Cam Newton. I know little reach, but speaking on mobility, went from Tom to a scrambler. If he wants Russ. I think certainly Belichick would love to be able to get his hands on Russ. I don't think there's any way Russell would go in and want to do the Patriot way of things. I think that would be limiting to Russ, and he wouldn't want to be riding on the back of Brady's legacy there. But certainly that doesn't hesitate or keep Bill Belichick from wanting to get his hands on him. I think more of what Bill Belichick's done here is I think that he's gravitating towards the mobile quarterback and understanding the way that decimates defenses in the modern era in a way that didn't 25, 30 years ago. And he's embracing that, and he's a guy that does tend to be a little innovative in his thinking as a coach, and that despite he being an older coach, he is not set in his ways, and he is willing to be flexible in order to make a better version of his team. So I think he's just leaning towards getting those scrambling quarterbacks because, frankly, it's where the game's going. You're going to need to just have a scrambling quarterback here probably within the next 10 years. The time of the statue quarterbacks just sitting back in the pocket, slinging it, gunslinging it, immobile, those days are kind of over with, I think. And you get the last few of them are kind of rounding out their careers here. But once they go, I think you're going to need to have guys that can really move around back there. Randall says Stafford had top 5 all-time wide receiver, 2 first-round tight ends. For whatever reason, he didn't elevate the players around him. And had some good offensive lines over the course of that time, too. Not always great offensive lines, but had some pretty good offensive lines in the course of his time there as well. They did a relatively okay job trying to surround him with some talent. Certainly the defense was struggling for years there. But he's been what he's been, you know. E. Gibson, only way Dallas is going to the Super Bowl is if they buy tickets. I can't see that defense have any. That defense is going to hold them back, and they're trying to transition. I think Quinn's going to try to run a 3-4 scheme there. They don't really have the personnel to do it. They've got 15 linebackers, not really any pass rushers. The secondary is suspect. I can't get behind it. The only way they get there is if everything broke in their favor, and certainly that division sucks. I mean, that's their division to grab just because everybody in that division is not going to get it done. But I don't see them getting through Washington. Seahawks Network says, I don't get the whole McVay can make Stafford better thing. I think he can make him maybe a little bit better because I think McVay is a guy who gets more out of quarterbacks than less. I mean, we do have to acknowledge with McVay that he didn't draft Goff. He inherited Goff. And he certainly got the best out of Goff. He got a better version out of Goff than what they'd gotten prior. Part of that also was Goff was getting a little older and he wasn't a rookie anymore. But it must be said that he understood how to kind of do what he needed to do to work around maybe some of the limitations within Jared Goff's game. You saw that in the Rams initially early on getting their plays in very early so that there was still plus 15 seconds left on the clock. So essentially they would come to the line of scrimmage to where McVay could make the read of the line of scrimmage for Goff, simplifying things for him so that he could then just make the play and go. So McVay definitely can help out a player and get him a little bit better. You could make the argument, Seahawks Network, how much better or how much insight is he going to provide a guy who's been in this league 15 years and seen it all? What thing is he going to tap into that he's not seeing? We'll see if it does it on its own, but I think we're all a little bit skeptical, but that Stafford alone is going to somehow push them over the top. Seahawks Network says Russ has 4 more playoff wins than Stafford in the last 5 years than Stafford does in his whole career. Facts, man. Damian Baisley, Jamarcus Russell was the worst quarterback. When was he the worst quarterback? Last year? I hope you're not saying last year. 312 says Seahawks fans in the chat can take a look at the amount of points Russell has been putting up since that fluke 2-year one from Legion of Boom. It's official. Russell sucks and isn't a winner. I don't know how you could say that he isn't a winner. First off, I don't know how you could say he sucks. You may not feel like Russell Wilson is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but to say that he sucks, I think shows just that's way off the mark. Wide off the mark. Not a winner. He's never had a losing season in his entire career in a 10-year run. Show me a quarterback who's had the same opening 10-year run to their career and explain to me how that's not a winner. Can't sign off on that one, man. Sorry. Ooh. Russ has a no-trade clause, says Joe Lopez, so I feel that by the 6th or 7th week, teams started doing cover 2 and Pete got desperate. So Russ got upset, therefore all the offseason drama was for. I think the offseason drama was built up on a lot of things, Joe, and it was a lot of years in the making, not just this last season. I think it came to a head this last season. I think that the Coach Carroll philosophy and the Russell Wilson Wanta philosophy went head-to-head, and both of them played a game of chicken, and nobody drove their car off the road, and instead the team drove its car off the road. That's kind of the way it played out. But there was a lot of developing things that's been building up here. This is not something that just happened over the course of a night. It's something that takes years of kind of a relationship building going, and it just kind of came to a head. Hopefully, it coming to a head means now it's come to some sort of resolution. That's the only thing that we can hope in addition to that. Truth is, I know it says, my point on Trubisky isn't that the Bears are secretly burning crosses. There is a long history of racism with NFL quarterbacks. The Bears and Mitch are just a recent example. It's a cultural norm. There was certainly a hesitancy as far as NFL teams to look at black quarterbacks when you look at the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I mean, you just go back and look at the highlights of that time period. Not a lot of black quarterbacks under center, being given a lot of different chances. And some of that's the stigmas that was attached with those players during that time period, which is completely unfair and completely racist at the same point in time. Where I'm hesitant on that, though, truth as I know it, is to ascribe that same mentality that existed in the 60s and 70s and maybe even the beginning of the 80s and say that it now does exist here in 2021 in this Bears organization. And again, we could go team by team. I don't know that it's all that interesting, but you could probably go team by team through the league and find a lot of teams out there that haven't had a black quarterback that they've drafted. I mean, how many black quarterbacks have the Lions drafted? How many black quarterbacks have the Green Bay Packers drafted? How many, black quarterbacks have our Seahawks drafted? There's a lot of teams out there that haven't drafted black quarterbacks. Now a lot of that built on, like I said, on the 60s, 70s, and 80s mentality of not bringing them in. Yeah. But is it that pervasive now 20, 30 years later? That's the part where I'm open to believing it, truth as I know it. It's not that I'm saying it isn't possible that it exists. It could exist. But if you're going to levy that charge, you got to bring more than it being a gut feeling that that's what you think happened. It's got to be, we've got something tangibly as far as some proof to go that is, because it's a pretty major charge to levy at a team. You're willing to be a little bit less good as an organization because you're going to value a skin color of a quarterback over another in 2021. 312 Russell is overrated. He put up 10 points against the trash Vikings defense, 26 points against the Lions trash defense. 20 against the Falcons trash defense, 22 against the Cowboys trash defense. I really don't know what you mean by that. We put up more points in all those teams. We put up more points. So you're off, man. That's off. And again, I didn't know a quarterback was the one that dictated all the points for an offense. I thought there was 10 other players on the offensive side helping him out. I didn't realize it was all on one player to put up the points offensively speaking. Certainly think the quarterback carries a bit of that, but yeah. I don't know, man. We broke through 1-2. I think we did. Seahawks Network, there is a point to be made with Russell's recent playoff performances, but it's no doubt that Russ is better than Stafford. Yeah. It's not even a question. Three 1-2 is just trolling at this point. I know you are 3-1-2. In the individual brilliance, that's where he showed his slip on that one. The individual brilliance of Matt Stafford. I can't be mad. I love it. I love the individual brilliance. Oh God. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. All right, well, let's get the last of our chat in. I'm going to be doing again tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Going to go on the Last Second Sports channel over there. I'll be reposting the video here to this channel. So if you miss it over there, I'll be posting the video back over to this channel here at some point during the week. But either way, we'll get into the last of the questions here, and then we will wrap it up. Another great live stream show here today. If you do like what you're listening to, please do hit that like button for me, please. It does help me out quite a bit. I know it seems weird and silly, but it does help out quite a bit. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. We're about 200 away here, man. I'm rounding that corner. I can see it. I can see it. No, you took one thing I said 3-1-2 and turned it around. So the 3-1-2 says TheSeahawksNest. Yep, I got you to say it. Stafford shouldn't be to blame for not winning a playoff game. He's had no help throughout his career. And you're making this equivalent to me saying that the Seahawks put up so many points against these teams that you're presenting. By the way, they put up more points than you presented. So it's sort of, you defunct your own argument on that because they put up more points. They put more than 22 points up against the Cowboys last year. Let's go double check on this. Let's check 3-1-2 stats, shall we? And let's also remember, in that particular game, DK Metcalf had a 60-yard touchdown and then started to hot dog it at the end, costing him 7 more points in that particular football game. But let's take a look and see, I guess. Let's take a look and see. I shouldn't be acknowledging you on this because you're just being silly, but we're wrapping this up, so it's all good. So you said we scored 22 points against the Cowboys, but we put 38 points against the Cowboys. So I guess you're playing a little bit fast and loose with those stats, aren't you, 3-1-2, to try to accommodate a silly argument. And you know it's silly. I'm not telling you nothing you don't know. Rick Kazi, thanks again and looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, Rick. And we will be going a little more consistent. I took a couple weeks off. I'm always working on background content. So I'm just trying to get some other stuff video-wise up. But we will be getting this consistently as the season clicks in, this training camp clicks in. We'll be getting more of the 2 a week going here. And you guys will be seeing more and more from me. We're going to hit it harder this year on the channel than we've ever hit it before. So you're going to get more of me than you've ever seen. You're going to tell me to go away and shut up. We've had enough, but I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep coming. Joe says, thank you, Brando, for your dedication. Love for the Hawks. Good night. Have a good night, Jose. Joe, appreciate you jumping in. Randall, thank you for your donation. Appreciate you. Says, well, Adams missed more or less than 1.5 practices. He'll miss more than 1.5, but he'll miss no more than 5 practices. So somewhere between 1.5 and 5 practices before he signs his deal. But he will push the limit on that just a little bit to make sure he's maximizing out exactly the last he can absolutely make. Truth is, I know, it says, what is a shocker is San Francisco trading up and taking a black quarterback at a small school with a short resume. That's proof times are changing. Yeah, I mean, for sure. They are. I think they've been changing for a while, though. I mean, I look across the league and there's a lot more black quarterbacks now than ever, and it's been that way. It's been going in that direction. But yeah, I think it's just where I think the point on it is too, is that I think that we're in a time and age right now where you from a front office standpoint, you from a coaching standpoint, you've got only so much time to make hay while the sun's shining. And to think that you can do that while operating within some sort of prejudices and still get your ultimate success while other teams aren't hamstringing themselves like that, aren't putting an arm tied behind their back like that, that would take quite a bit of hubris to operate within that realm and act that way. It's kind of hard for me to see necessarily. It just is. And again, I can be convinced of it, but you gotta show me some proof. Gotta see that proof. Brady is on another level, so he just is. I tend to think 3-1-2 is probably Dustin. That's my guess on it. If I had to guess. I had to make myself a guess. Truth is, I know it. Jackson going 32nd was criminal. Dude was electric like Manziel, but with a legit NFL superstar body. Yeah, he should not have dropped that far. He should have been, to me, a guy that you took in to me, the teens was the right place to take Jackson. I think thinking that he should have been taken in the top 10 with the limitations as a thrower is a little bit high for him. You can see it in him mechanically and how he throws the ball going back to college, and it's not changed. It's a little bit of, he fights with himself coming through that forward and that motion. He can still get a lot of oomph on the ball, but his accuracy is kind of all over the place a little bit and doesn't throw with a tremendous amount of touch. It's all kind of a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. He's not the greatest of a thrower in off-platform situations in his accuracy. Sometimes he can hit it, sometimes he can't. That stuff hasn't really developed with his game. And I think, again, you made the pick of him. You're going to have to make the pick with changing your offense around him. Mark Roman has essentially built that offense around accepting that my quarterback's going to run 10 to 15 times a game. And that's a sticky territory to fall into, because you're accepting the fact that at any point in time, our season's going to get cooked if our guy gets beaten up. At any point in time, everything's gone because we're putting him out here. He's basically being placed out vulnerable, playing and play out in these read option plays, and him running a sweep as the lead. I mean, they definitely have taken a risk with that, and it's paid off for them. But it would have been a risk, and a pretty big risk to take when you're talking about a very high first-round pick. It's a lot easier risk to take when you're talking about the last pick in the first round. It's not a flyer point, but it's just a little more place where you feel we can take that risk. We're not taking as much juice here. Michael Bakamo, I'm glad to hear you're going to do a Poona Ford video since he's my prime breakout candidate. Just go back and watch his play with the eye to noticing his real lateral speed. He would be, Michael, seemingly a perfect fit over there at the 3 tech. And I think the only thing that's held him back from being able to have more of a role over there at the 3 tech has been Jaron Reed's, him being here for the last couple of years in Seattle, really just keeping him at that 3 tech and is just the only 3 tech there. And they just haven't rotated him out a lot. He's just not had the opportunity to really flash over there. And it's hard for you to flash as a pass rusher over at the 1 tech because predominantly you're getting double teamed more than the guy that's going to be the 3 tech. And so when you're getting 2 double teams every time, how to get penetration at that, to show out of that, it gets a little harder. It just does. But he's going to get a chance to shine this year out of that 3 tech. And I do think you've confirmed it on that one for me, Michael. I think that will be my next Hawks Nest episode videos. I'm going to do I'll do a Poona Ford video on just kind of discussing some of this, because I think it's really worth acknowledging he is really, truly a breakout candidate from that standpoint, and being just that same kind of Gray Jarrett prototype, being a guy's a great upper level run defender from the 3 tech role, because now he's only being singled up on those run blocking situations instead of being double teamed. But then likewise in pass rushing situations, he gets to really utilize that lateral quickness, his ability to create natural leverage wins, being that he's a sub 6 foot player. He wins leverage games all the time, and that's part of what can help give you a good pass rush as well. So love what I see out of him, man. I have a lot of hope for him as a player. I think he's going to be a really good guy for us. I think it'll be a natural fit, and that's where he'll suit in the rest of his career, probably going forward. The King says Wilson's like the 3 to 5 best quarterbacks of all time behind Aaron, A-Rod, Mahomes, and Brady. I'd probably put a couple other guys ahead of Russell at that point. Guy like Peyton Manning, I think you probably have to put above Russell. 5 MVPs, a couple Super Bowl wins. There's a couple guys in there that probably get a little bit ahead of him, but he's definitely climbing the all-time list. That's for sure. Seahawks Network says at the time, I thought the Saints would have taken Jackson at 14 in 2018. I thought that would have made a lot of sense for them. I especially think like Sean Payton's a little bit like Belichick in my opinion. And I spoke to the fact of Belichick's a guy who's used to having the pocket quarterbacks in a system and picking apart defenses, who I feel like will make the change, transition to more of a mobile quarterback as you go forward with him, be it whether it's Cam Newton or somebody else. Sean Payton was that guy who I thought would do the same type of thing. You got a guy who's very much the pocket passer in Drew Brees, who wasn't able to do much mobility-wise and clean things up when it gets ugly and when the scripted stuff isn't working, and then he would move to the mobile guy. He's moved to the Taysom Hill mobile guy, but Lamar would have been maybe more of a natural fit for him at that time, I felt like. A bit odd that they didn't go that direction, but I think Hill was there at that point, so maybe they were already on that, why should we go out there and get this other guy that's a lot like the guy that we already have anyway here, whether that was right or wrong. Seahawks Network, but he still has room to improve on his legacy since he's only 24. Oh, Mahomes. I don't think Mahomes is top 20 at this point. Both of his Super Bowl performances were suspect. Yeah, I don't think it's early after a couple years in your career to put a player in that mark. I'm not one of those guys who'll tell you that Mahomes is already a Hall of Famer, for instance, which is a going argument out there that I think is kind of silly. He's not. But he's on the great trajectory. He's had one of the best openings to his career at quarterback than anybody in NFL history. It has to be definitely acknowledged. Michael, as soon as Puna connects his hands and feet, he's going to explode. Then go watch the Clint Hurdle mic'd up video of him running the dummies drill. Whoa. I will. I'll go check that out, Michael. I saw that Clint had a little mic'd up thing off of the training camp. But yeah, I think when he gets a chance so much of playing the one tech is that reactive. You're dealing with the two guys and trying to split them. You're just trying to hold the ground at times and just be an anchor in there. Whereas with the three tech, you really get to attack and you're on the hunt. And I think that he's just with his skill set, the leverage, the quickness and the speed that he applies to both of his game for being a guy who's 300 pounds. I think that that's really going to help him. The leverage stuff is what has helped Aaron Donald out a lot, where he's not the tallest guy, but he's able to win leverage battles by still being just as strong as a taller, bigger guy, but doing on a smaller, compact frame. Geno Atkins is another guy that I've talked about, done the same sort of thing. And Puna can be right along that same line on what he can do. 312 says, appreciate Brady's greatness, or I'm calling the cops. Brady's great. I got no problem with Brady. He's great. Seahawks Network says, see you with Brandon. Appreciate the stream. Thank you so much, man. Adrian D, what's up? What's your thoughts on Sherm? I personally think that now is the time to hang up the cleats. Signs of CTA have been shown. I just don't want him to sustain another head injury. It sucks. Well, with Sherm, I'm still open to bringing him back in, Adrian D. CTE, this could be some sign of that. It's factoring in here, maybe. I do tend to believe, though, that this could be substance abuse, alcohol, something along those lines as well. And if it's that, it's not necessarily CTE. It's that he just needs to clean up that potential addiction or problem situation that he has. I do think that there's still an opening to him coming back to Seattle. I don't think that he's done, Adrian. I think he still wants to play football. I think with this situation, it's going to lessen the amount of available teams out there that are willing to sign him. He's crossed off the list of a lot of teams probably because of this. But with that said, it probably, if anything, makes it a little more likely he ends up eventually either coming back to Seattle or San Francisco at the end of the day, and probably not on a very big contract, probably not anything past a 1-year deal. Jonathan Dela Cruz, I'm going to training camp August 11th. Woo! Oh, I'm jealous, Jonathan. I'd like to get myself out to some training camps myself. That'd be cool to go out there and see. So maybe give us some reports back, Jonathan, when we go live. Tell us what you think. Get some notes written down on what you're seeing out there, who's standing out. You can be our Hawks Nest man on the scene. Truth is, I know it. The reason Isaiah Adams is a cancer is because he shows strong traits of narcissism. Pete and Russ know this. Listen closely to how they speak on eggshells whenever they mention his name. Agreed. I do think that he's got that potential narcissism streak in there, and he could be that problem. He could be. But I also think that he was a leader coming out of college. I think he was a leader on that Jets defense. I think the thing that made him a malcontent in New York was not his play on the football field or the player he was, but rather that he was asking for money that they were not willing to pay. So I think that those things drove a little bit of that issue. He's not been a problem since he's arrived here. He's been a good soldier. He's fought through injury to play out on the football field. He set a sack record for defensive backs last year. I have a hard time picking apart him as a player right now. If I see more evidence of the fact he's a cancer and he's an issue, I'll call it. But haven't quite seen enough of that to say that that's what I think he is at this point, or even that there's some leanings towards that necessarily. And as Jonathan Dela Cruz says, confidence and narcissism are two different things. Tim Jobs, I was in African hunting lions when Russell Wilson ransacked my campsite. I had to tell the locals about... Okay. Okay, Tim. Okay. All right, well, we're, I think, finished up here. We got a good 3 hours in, and I appreciate all of you guys for watching the show. We do have a membership program. If you are a member or want to be a member, I'm going to be doing weekly articles there on the membership page. We'll also be doing some live streams before the game, maybe even halftime during the year. So it will be cool if you want to go in there and be a member onto the channel. We will try to get up again this week, sometime Thursday or Sunday from the channel as far as doing a live stream, but I will be doing tomorrow, Last Second Sports. We'll be doing a live stream with them, going into the belly of the beast with the 49ers fan and discussing our outlook on this upcoming season for the NFL, Niners, Seahawks, NFC West, and all that goodness. Thank you so much for watching the show. You guys always keep this thing awesome and going. I appreciate all the people who donated on the channel. It is appreciated as well. And not anonymous, Leland Kimball, Randall McDaniel, thank you so much for that. Other than that, just don't forget, please never forget, 10 days away, folks. Get excited. It's like Christmas is coming. It's like Christmas. We're almost there. We made it through a long offseason, 9 days away now. 9 days away to football goodness once again. Thank you so much, and don't you forget, don't you ever forget,